Thanks. All right. Thanks. All right. Here's a cool graphic I got on the website. This is your wind map. Kind of give you an idea how wide the winds are. And the NHC is talking about the wind field expanding, hurricane force winds. That's why some of these hurricane force winds are going to reach well past landfall, especially Tampa Bay area. If this wind field expands a little bit, then we'll see hurricane force winds, obviously north still. That's a definite. Here's some of your latest impacts. Now, this map really, it's hard to imagine, but they're sticking to their guns. Purple is your highest risk for winds. Now, it's not sustained. It's just saying potential. And we still have a large area in purple, way above hurricane force winds. They're showing up for potential. Red and purple are basically winds above hurricane force that are could be gusts. Not everybody's going to get those winds, but that's a large chunk of area that could get some pretty serious winds. Still, even with that track change, we're seeing winds to the north. That's because our system is so wide. It's opening up. We're going to have squall lines to the north. Some of these model maps here that you can see. This is one map I wanted to show before I forget. This is the blend. This is the National Weather Service hourly blend of wind speed, and it's showing a max speed of 143 before landfall here. Something might be over water, but bottom line with this map, it updates every hour, but you kind of get an idea the winds. So there's your core going right to Orlando. Deja vu, people. Charlie 2.0. We're going to see hurricane force winds all the way to Orlando. So if you evacuated, guess what? History repeats itself. The hurricane's coming to you. Just a little farther north, though. Charlie did go just a tick south, but so that's some serious winds. I mean, look, we got red. That's that's 110, 20, 30 miles an hour wind. That could be well inland as this thing starts to weaken. So that's big concern here for the path of Ian going inland, just outside of the Bay Area here. So the large area here going to be affected with winds. Power outages are going to be unbelievable. We'll probably see widespread power outages in a large chunk of peninsula here, west central Florida. So yeah, power outages are going to be huge. The second part of the story here I want to talk about real quick, probably the most amazing thing that I saw on this 5 o'clock update was this. I have never seen rain estimates this high officially. I shared the ones earlier from the GFS and Euro, right? Some of those were showing 30 inches of rain, 40 inches of rain. But here's your official NWS map, and it's showing 15 to 20 inches across coast to coast. Anything in purple, pink, you could have up to 20 inches of rain. I can't even imagine what 20 inches of rain in a 2 or 3 day window looks like. And that includes the whole peninsula. We are going to have rivers, lakes, flooding. I'm afraid that we've never seen if this verifies. That is in the red area is 10 to 15. So basically everybody, red and purple, could see 10 plus inches of rain. Unbelievable. I just can't imagine that occurring. So that's coming, folks. I'm sorry to say this has been showing up consistent, and finally the NOAA got it on their map. That's big time. Obviously they've really upped their flood potential. I don't think I've ever seen purple. 70% high flood chance, and that reaches all the way to Jacksonville. So that's the second part of this story, man. The storm's twofold. One, we're going to have a huge major hurricane landfall wind event that's going to total destruction wherever it hits, guaranteed. I've seen Cat 4 damage if it's Cat 4. Again, they're saying 3-4, but it doesn't matter at this point. 3-4 damages are pretty extreme. That's sad. We're going to see that. Businesses are going to be destroyed. Homes are going to be destroyed. We're going to see damage all the way to Orlando with hurricane warnings now throughout the whole state almost. That's the first problem we got. Second, we're going to have tornadoes tomorrow. We're going to have South Florida already experiencing flooding. We have higher than normal tides right now. So we're seeing flooding in Key West. We're seeing flooding in Miami. We've seen a bunch of tornado warnings today. We're going to see those continue tomorrow. And then third is going to be this inland flooding thing, man. I've said it before. It's like the wind gets all the attention, but it's these flooding rain events that end up stealing the headlines after a storm because it's not talked about enough. You know, everybody's worried about the wind speed. This, to me, is... I haven't seen this. And talking to folks, our state is saturated. So this is going to be interesting how this plays out. If it indeed happens. That's just something I can't imagine. So a couple other graphics here I wanted to share. Hurricane Hunter's right there now. This is an example of the radar. Look, it's coming. There it is, man. It's just right off the coast of the Keys. Keys are getting some nasty. Look, we already got tornado warning. Look at that. Tornado warnings popping up. Boom, boom, boom. 3 tornado warnings. This is going to continue tomorrow. The closer this gets to the coast, we're going to have tornado warnings. Notice the direction with the squall lines. See, they're kind of pointing that direction. So this is going to happen all day tomorrow. And a storm kind of sets its tone early. We've seen tropical systems not really have tornado warnings in the past. I've seen a bunch today already. So we could see a bunch tomorrow. Some storms have tornado warnings. Some storms don't. This one appears it's going to have a lot tomorrow. SPC is already talking about it. So a big chunk of the state tomorrow will probably be under a tornado watch. And the other part I want to talk about this surge. You know, we talked about this Irma-like setup here. We got 4 to 6 foot of surge expected up here. And that is pretty significant because we saw flooding during Irma. So if you live up here, 4 to 6 foot of surge, 3 to 5 all the way down to Flagler, Volusia County line. So 3 to 5 foot is could definitely cause some problems on low-lying areas. And this includes the St. Johns River. St. Johns River is already almost maxed out. So all this water has nowhere to go, and it's just going to shove itself into the little nook here, and there you go. Long range, it does not appear that this thing is going to intensify. I know we got people in Georgia. Here's the deal. It's definitely going to interact with that frontal boundary. There is dry air coming. So, could be a storm off the coast of Jacksonville. Could have just enough juice to get going and to be a little something. This cut through the state. Right back where it all began. The old Euro is king this time around. So, yes, South Georgia, South Carolina, you're going to be looking at tropical storm conditions as this thing kind of starts to get tore up a little bit. This is what it's going to look like. You got a lot of dry air here in the coming down. There's a frontal boundary that's kind of stuck up there, and it's been the year of the front. Hey, told y'all, year of the front. We've had fronts all year long. But here's what's going to happen. We got dry air. It's going to get wrapped up around our system, and that's just a slow dying death. Look at all this dry air over Florida. It's going to be incredible on Friday. Look at this. This Friday in Florida, you're going to have blue skies, and you won't even know a storm came. Isn't that weird? How many of you Florida original Floridians remember the day after a storm how blue it is and crisp and cool, right? That is synonymous with hurricanes in Florida. When they pass, cool, crisp, dry air, and that's usually because of a front. The fronts pick up systems, pull them out of here. All this dry, cool air is coming in. Not cool, but kind of cool. So hopefully that'll at least help in the recovery efforts, because we're gonna need them. It's gonna be a major landfalling hurricane, which is no joke. I just don't think people realize sometimes, landfalling major hurricane. Now the Hurricane Center is updating every hour. We don't want to see the pressures drop. So the pressure's hanging at 952. Winds sometimes catch up to the pressure drops. Key West already sustained wind of 41, gusts to 60. Life-threatening storm surge, catastrophic winds, flooding, and the Florida. Look at this. Look at it. Life-threatening storm surge, catastrophic winds, flooding expected with Ian in the Florida Peninsula. So there ain't no ifs and buts, man. We got serious major hurricane coming towards. It looks like, if this thing takes any little track change, I mean, Fort Myers, right there. I mean, we'll see if there's any more wiggles and wobbles. Let's see what the latest look here is on the latest track. Remember, the south side is usually the east side, south side, or the northeast side, east side is the strong side. So you kind of want to see where that's setting up. So, man, see, look at these little wiggle wobbles. Isn't that so normal with tropical systems? You can get really worked up with these wiggles and wobbles and think, oh my God, it's going north. But they're wiggles and wobbles. It's so normal with strong hurricanes. So look, we went north, but the general line that you draw, that was a pretty good little shift here east though. There's where it's supposed to be. To me, it seems like it's still going to make a couple more little wiggles and wobbles. I'm heading to Fort Myers. I need a hotel room in Fort Myers. Does anybody know anybody that has a hotel that would take us? We need a hotel in Fort Myers. I heard Jim Cantori's in Punta Gorda. Now, wouldn't that be Charlie 2.0? And I know a lot of people live down here, Sanibel Island, Fort Myers. Right on the bottom side of that cone, man. Look at that. Port Charlotte, Englewood, Punta Gorda, right there. That's where Jim's at. Isn't that, man? If you Google the track of Charlie, it is almost exactly the same as this one, doing the same exact thing. So again, pinpoint a location at this point is hard to do. Remember, the wind field is huge. Let's take a look at the latest track, or the actual width of it. It was 35 miles from center. Now it's 40 miles, so it's growing. It's 40 miles now. So wherever that Eyewall is, it's going to be an 80-mile roughly section of hurricane winds. 80 miles. 40 miles from center. 80 miles overall. Tropical storm force winds extend out 140 miles now. So tropical storm force winds extend out 280 total, the circle of the storm. So tropical storm force winds 140 miles. Where that thing hits, 140 miles either way is tropical storm force winds. That's why we still have a hurricane warning in Tampa Bay, because they're expecting still, the path that it's taken, it's going to be still pretty darn close to Tampa Bay. Enough to bring, some nasty weather. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll just keep looking for little wiggle wobbles. I mean, the big question now is there enough time to weaken? That was my biggest fear. In fact, I actually put that on Twitter. I can't believe I did. It just usually starts all kinds of controversy. I don't even read comments anymore. But let's see what they said. Here, had 520 likes. So the 950. This is my thoughts, and they still are. A 952 millibar with a landfall tomorrow evening. Now it's a This is earlier this afternoon. A landfall. Judith, I got your text. The problem is I don't know if they're open or not. I know they're there, but we have to call them to see if they're even open. So landfall a landfall now in the early afternoon. Does this have even enough time to weaken? That's the problem. Winds are going to be catching up to this pressure drop. So, and I said I hope we're not seeing a strengthening system at landfall. That would extend more serious conditions inland, which we're seeing. It's just something about strengthening hurricanes at landfall is what we see a lot. peaking at the wrong time. This thing went over that warm loop eddy. It's you know, I mean, it doesn't get much more scarier than this. Looking at this right here, this is not something that we see every day. Trust me. I mean, there is clear signs that this is still firing convection lightning. No dry air. I mean, I don't think this thing has any time to weaken. So it is what it is. It's going to be a bad storm if you're living along that coast. And now that we have hurricane warnings inland, these winds are going to push their way well inland. Inland effects. Pretty excited. I was able to do a Fox interview tonight, and I'll share the link. But she was something about one thing that might get overlooked or something. I believe two things on this storm are going to be four things that stand out the most. One, you don't deny any strong hurricane in the Gulf hooking east on an October style setup with a front. We've had fronts all year long. Number two, South Florida thought they weren't going to get much. They're getting hammered. Number three, inland effects. So much interest is put on the wind speed at landfall. We're going to have a hurricane all the way to Orlando. Same as Charlie back in 2004. So we're going to have roof damages. We're going to have power outages. We're going to have storm damage all the way to Orlando at least. And the flooding. The flooding is the one thing that is going to be talked about. The Euro is a really good model. Look at this. I think I showed everything here. Flooding rain. Now they've even increased it. Look at this. So extreme flooding rain here across Tampa Bay area. But now we got a huge area here, which the St. Johns River does not need. This is as high as it gets. Flooding rain potential. Gainesville. You know, you guys, again, inland, Gainesville, flooding. We're talking 25, 30 inches of rain coming. So I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't know. I don't know if we've ever had or not. We're going to look at the Euro rain estimates, though, because the Euro is sometimes spot on with rain predictions. It took forever for the rain maps to catch up to these possibilities. So here's the current rain estimates on the Euro, and it's in line. We got 18, max 28 somewhere. Oh, along the coast here, 25. This is the Euro, but isolated obviously 25.8 along the coast, just north of Fort Myers. We got 17, 16, 15, so 19 here around just north of Daytona Beach, maybe. That's a lot of rain. And then let's see what else we got. Let's look at the GFS. Do the blend of the two, and the GFS is showing a very similar situation here. Let's pull it up and bring it to the big top. And here's those crazy rains again. 21, 25, 19, 28. So you get two models predicting that, it's pretty much set in stone. We're going to have some serious rain. So anyway, enough about the water. Nobody likes to talk about the water. They just want to talk about the wind. But power outages are going to be extreme. I guarantee we're going to see power outages like this. Well, no, not like that. That's not right. It's going to be wider. I didn't do Fort Myers correctly. It's going to be way the heck down here. It's actually going to probably be like this. Extreme power outages will be like something like that. So there's going to be a lot of people about it. For sure. Not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. All right. I got to reboot something here. It just got a little messed up. So yeah, guys, I'm not meaning to apologize to anybody, but all right. So somebody asking Citrus County, hey, what's up, Eric? Yeah, we can talk about that. So let's see. Let's look at some, obviously you're going to be 10 to 15 inches of rain up there. You're going to have some storms surge is reduced a lot, which is good news. But just have a little bit, 3 to 5 foot storm surge. Probably be under a possible tornado watch tomorrow. Let's see if SPC is showing that. They kind of drop it by you guys, so just it's a heavy rain event that way. No chance this thing turns up towards you. Remember, most of the heavy stuff on these systems are on the south side of the center line. The farther south this goes, the less effects anybody above Tampa Bay will get. But it is a big system. Again, it's 80 miles wide of hurricane force winds, and 280 wide. So there you go. I mean, you draw it out. Look, we got just like that. So some of these heavy bands are still going to reach just north of Tampa Bay and south. Hurricane warnings were extended a little bit farther south. So it indeed did it. It's curving east, man. They had to adjust their track. Every adjustment, little east, little east, little east, and it's still so. But listen, if you need everything you need to know right here, threats and impacts right here. This is a good map by the National Hurricane Center. It kind of lays it all out there, and you can see flooding, surge, winds, and tornado threats. Another good tool, believe it or not, is type in your location here, and your National Weather Service office is doing an amazing job right now with updates for people with the storm. So every office has their own division that is giving up to date, hurricane warning, storm surge warning, a lot of discussion, some graphics. So you can you can definitely get a lot of good information from the National Weather Service on your location. So that's it. I don't know. I mean, we're at the point now, folks. It's a done deal. I mean, we're watching. We're just going to see how strong it can get. It doesn't have a big window to do anything right now. It's either going to be a little more or a little less. If you read a discussion on the NHC map, they pretty much tell you that. It's kind of like whether Ian comes ashore as a Category 4 or a large Category 3 after an Eyewall cycle, avoiding a large hurricane seems very unlikely. So they're basically saying we are guaranteed to have a destructive hurricane for Florida. A larger Eyewall cycle, see this is the second point. Strong hurricanes go through an eyewall replacement cycle, and when it does that, it opens up a new eyewall, and they're usually bigger. The outside one erodes the little one, so you end up with a bigger eye. Well, that eye ends up spreading hurricane force winds even out more. Right? Thus, the hurricane warnings for Florida or Tampa still, because you get the hurricane winds when the storm comes ashore, but then you also got a bigger eye that's spreading more wind. So they're telling you that a tight Category 4, I think the worst case would be an eyewall replacement because it's going to affect more people. So that's why they say a large Category 3, meaning a larger category. Man, I got something about large Category 3 eyewall. So there's nothing we can do at this point. Life-threatening storm surge is increasing across the Florida West Coast. Hurricane force winds beginning as early as Wednesday morning. Devastating wind damage is expected near the core of Ian. Devastating wind damage near the eye of Ian. Residents should rush their preparations, meaning it's going to be here by morning. Heavy rainfall will affect most of the Florida peninsula. Flash, urban, small stream flooding, considerable flooding is expected with widespread, prolonged, moderate to major river flooding across central Florida. They're kind of warning you right there. Prolonged, moderate to major river flooding across central Florida. That's what you got. Can't spell it out. I mean, there's nothing really else left to say. Going north, I know everybody's wondering about what's going to happen. We got a tropical storm watch along the coastal, Georgia. It should be getting pretty beat up by then. I showed you that one map with the dry air, so it should be getting to weaken the time it gets too far north. I mean, that's why we have a depression here. So again, it just looks like a rain event. Here's some of your rainfall totals expected. It's still there. This is going to be from our sheared system. So as our system begins to weaken, we're going to have a pretty big rain event along the coast. That's kind of been showing up regardless of what's happening down here. All along, this system was going to go up, get tore up by that front, and spread its moisture eastward. And that's what we're seeing. So you're going to, coastal event, 6 to 10 inches. And that'll be going into the weekend. So I don't see any big winds really there. So anyway, so there you go, y'all. It's about done. We know where it's going. It's going to be a major hurricane. It's going to tear some stuff up. Unfortunately, man, you cannot hide from a major hurricane. These winds, we weren't talking about a major hurricane a couple of days ago. We were talking about a system that's going to stop and become a surge issue. This thing is strengthened stronger than it was expected to. And they're going to go back and they're going to find out likely that loop current was a big reason why. The warm Gulf waters, man, you cannot turn your back on the Gulf September, October. And you can't assume it is not going to hook east. All the modeling and everything. GFS had this sucker all the way to the Mobile one time. We've had fronts down the whole season, man. If you listen to us, these fronts have ruled the weather this year. Fronts have been strong. We've had cool air, like unseasonably cool. In August, we had a cold front come down. Cold fronts have been the story. And if you threw away everything that you see in models, cold fronts all year, and the GFS is all over the place. And that's exactly what's happened to this forecast. The GFS just threw so much trickery and everything that the cone was wide and it was here and the GFS was there. The Euro and the Icon. Who's favorite? What is my favorite model? I need to remember that. I fell in love with the Icon 2 years ago. And here it is. It was the only one predicting this continuing trend south of Tampa Bay. It was consistent. So the Icon, in my opinion, won. The Euro was second. And both are shoving the system through the state now. The Euro still bounced around, but it still hovered in that same west central area, But there you go, man. That's the rain. Purple west central Florida all the way up Interstate I-4 corridor into Disney World. We're going to have a hurricane winds all the way to Disney. There you have it. All right. So that's the way it works. We got a lot to prepare for. I'm worried about the effects of the wind. I'm worried about the rainfall. I'm worried about the flooding and power outages to come. And I just think that that's going to be the bigger story. Is if this rain does verify, we are going to see a lot of unexpected trouble. I think that we could see a surprise in the surge. Been very consistent with this idea because of what we learned with Irma. A strong, large system brings in surge, so we could see 4 to 6 feet of surge. That's quite a bit. St. Mary's River and all that water surge for St. John's River now coming in. So there you go. Counterclockwise down here, and the opposite up here. Amazing how that works. All right, I got a lot of work to do. So listen, we're switching focus now. I'm heading south. I don't see any more trends coming now, people. I don't. I mean, we are so close to this thing. We might see a little wiggle south still, possibly, but I got my eye on two things right now. One is going to be these updated. I watch Tropical Tidbits. You can watch the Hurricane Hunters. They are flying back and forth. They have routes. They're out there right now. They're tracking this thing. So if you really want to see where this thing is going, we need to track the hurricane hunters and make sure we don't see any wiggles that are consistent. You know, let's see what the latest 6Z, just for fun, the 6Z GFS. In fact, I can zoom it in a little closer here on this one here. Let me hold on a minute. Let's. We do have some models that just came out, so I'm kind of curious, I guess, what the GFS just did. Now that we're so close, you almost have to kind of trust them, thinking that they're kind of know what they're talking about. You're right. So what do I use here? I guess I use this wind one. All right, let's zoom. Oh, I got to zoom out. Why is that thing? All right, there we go. Let's see. So here's the latest GFS. You know, north side of Fort Myers a little bit, but that's the latest GFS. Notice the winds, though. Notice the winds all the way to Tampa Bay. These are strong winds. These are 110. So look at this. Look at the strength. Still 950, 60 range. And it initialized. See, this is what I don't understand. It initialized at 972. That doesn't make sense. Why would it initialize at 971 when the system right now is 952? So it didn't initialize right. So that's not right. But anyway, look at these winds. Regardless, look at these winds. I mean, we're talking pink, 90 to 100. So yeah, you know, hurricane warnings definitely in place in Tampa Bay. This is why we're showing 90 to 100 to 110 wind gusts possible still. And that's that one graphic I showed you. And look at these winds all the way. Look at that, Interstate 4. We could see winds, you know, hurricane force winds all the way to Orlando. Orlando's under a hurricane warning now. And then a slow weakening. So the tracks are, but man, look at this wind. This is really, I'm really concerned about the inland effects that people aren't expecting. I mean, we're still seeing a 980s, even though this thing is off, showing 964. It's only at 986 right here, so it's a slow weakening. Let's take a look at the latest H-Wharf, which I love. We know the H-Wharf's intensity. Judith, I got your text. Thank you. We got people on it. No luck, huh? Okay. Here's the latest H-Wharf. I'm sorry about individual locations, guys. I can't do that. I wouldn't even know. I'd be afraid I'd tell you the wrong thing anyways. Because you know what? It's going to change a little bit. Nobody knows what they're going to get. They know what they could get. Here's the latest H-Wharf. And again, the track isn't the best. But it's showing 938. That is a bad hurricane. 932. What did it initialize? See, initialized too low, 944. So these models aren't initializing correctly, but still, it's at least maintaining that intensity of 940. So could be a category 3, 4, man. Category 4. Serious winds. And like I said, this is showing even, you know, winds are going to reach all the way to Tampa Bay. And a lot of these systems are skewing the winds a little to the north side. Expect it. So just keep your eye on the radar at this point. You know, the next updates that we just got a new suite of 6Z spaghetti models. Let's take a look at that. No, we didn't. That's 9 o'clock. What am I saying? We don't have a new suite. That's the last one right there. We're going to have a new one in 3 hours. So we'll see what the spaghetti models show. All right. All right, well, I'll be posting continuous updates for you. I just don't know about any lives. We'll have to play that by ear. We will be streaming live from the field now. So I'll be updating every time we get new spaghetti models, any hurricane hunter data. Just keep it on the page. I'll make sure everybody's updated with any track changes, any change in thinking. Guaranteed. I did add a new webcam. Check this out. This is Oldsmar Veterans Park. Weather Stem reached out to me, and we have an actual streaming live webcam from Oldsmar pointed to the bay. I don't know if we're going to get any storm surge, but we'll at least see some wind damage. So that's on there if you want to check that out. And my storm chasing will be on YouTube and Facebook. So you can actually watch it here if you want, or tune it out, or check it out on the app. So tornado warnings are going to rule the roost tonight. Tornado warnings are going to be continuous, guaranteed. These squall lines are very feisty. You can tell it's going to be one of these systems where it's just going to be producing tremendous amount of storms. We're seeing that already. So storms develop, and you guys haven't even got the rough stuff yet. I mean, it's coming quick, man. We could be talking about a noon landfall tomorrow morning. These things always speed up, and they always hook. I don't know what it is about Eastern Gulf hurricanes. They always speed up ahead of those approaching fronts, all the steering mechanisms, and they definitely, that's what they do. All right, I got to go. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Shelly, behind the scenes. She's been working her tail off 20 hours a day. And all the new followers, we really appreciate it. Hope you like what we do here. We're one big happy family. We'll get through this. I mean, 90% around 90% of all hurricane deaths are water related. So stay away from the water, stay away from surge, stay away from inland flooding, and there's a good chance you're going to be okay. Never run a generator in the garage, ever, ever, ever. Never run a generator close to an open window. Carbon monoxide deaths are real, and we get a lot of those during hurricanes, unfortunately. So please, no running generators in back porches or garages. That's not good. Check the traffic. I got a link here. Excuse me. Florida traffic, FL511.com, and you'll be able to keep abreast of what's going on once these evacuations, people start coming home. So that's a good site. This kind of give you track. It's not too bad right now. So cameras, so you can go there and get an idea what's going on. All right. See y'all later. Have a great evening. And if you're living down there, man, just hunker down. Was it Don Gourmet said that back in 2004? Hunker down. This is Charlie 2.0. And inland, it's coming next. And I probably should have got sandbags, but oh well.
over. Essentially, my question to you is, what are Tampanians concerned the most about? Is it the storm surge? Is it the flooding? Or is it the wind, especially when it comes to, their properties?
I will say specifically for the city of Tampa, it's the storm surge and the flooding. So Tampa is actually a very low level city, and it's mostly surrounded, it's Tampa Bay, it's surrounded by the bay. So even if you don't live directly near the water, we have a drainage system, but that tends to fill up very fast. So the big concern, yes, is storm surge, I would say, Andrew, and flooding, because also I should mention that it has been a very wet summer here in Florida. This ground is already very saturated, so people are worried about how much water it could withstand. I mean, before this storm shifted just a little bit east over the last couple of hours, they were talking 5 to 10 feet of storm surge and 25 up to 50 inches of rain. So water is definitely the main concern here, especially in the city of Tampa. And then Clearwater, St. Pete area, I mean, you have one-story, single-level homes right along the beach. Beautiful area, but not the best when it comes to 5 to 10 feet of storm surge.
Yeah, and Regina, in the last update we heard from Governor DeSantis, a lot of the concern as well is with these mobile home parks that are, in this area as well, about how they will fare this. But right now, as you know, you've covered these storms before. This is really on an hour-by-hour basis, watching the trajectory, seeing the winds pick up, seeing the rain pick up. So I guess going throughout the night here, we know it's not supposed to make landfall about this time tomorrow, but where do things stand? I know this is cliche, but is it really the calm before the storm?
I would say yes, just because if you look at the width of the storm and its power, I mean, it could make landfall as a Category 3 or a Category 4. Governor DeSantis has said multiple times in his updates that I've been following is it really doesn't matter where it makes landfall. All of the Gulf Coast mostly is going to feel some sort of impact. So really that's what people are bracing for right now is these conditions. I mean, it is expected to make landfall tomorrow afternoon into the evening. So everybody has been advised to have either an evacuation plan in place, or if you were boarding up your home and planned on hunkering down, everybody is said to have their plans ready to go by tonight, because, even DeSantis said no matter where it makes landfall, you could see these conditions up to 36 hours before that.
And Regina, just last, we also heard from emergency management officials, rather, that, there's going to be a point in time if you haven't left yet, if you haven't evacuated, and you make a call to some of these local hotlines and numbers for assistance, they're not going to go answered or heeded, because that would put a danger to the local responders themselves. They were essentially offering kind of a every man for yourself scenario. So what is that going to look like as well when this storm passes? What does it look like Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Hopefully not too bad. That is what everybody here is praying for. But,
okay.
Andrew, when that was said, that actually makes me think of, I am from New York. I stayed during Hurricane Sandy because, Long Island doesn't get hurricanes a lot. Nobody was sure of the impacts, but I do remember some of these single level homes filling completely up to the top with water, storm surge. I mean, I lived near the beach. So I remember one of somebody I went to school with, actually their family had to be rescued by jet ski. So as far as emergency management officials, getting out there, I can't see them not answering calls, but I can't imagine that it is going to be easy for them to get to some of these areas, especially when you've got waves, very powerful surges coming in their direction. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
All right, Regina Gonzalez there live for us in Tampa. Regina, the optimism is there. I could kind of tell in your voice, but the caution as well and the apprehension as we are, 24 hours out now from landfall with Ian. Regina, we'll talk to you again. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew. You too.
Okay, we're coming up on the top of the 4 o'clock hour here on the West Coast, almost 7 o'clock there in Tampa, Florida, where Regina is. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, though, we'll be also hearing from more of our Fox 13 Tampa team. We'll also hopefully be listening in to later tonight some of our Fox 35 Orlando teams as well about how they are more inland in Central Florida, preparing for Ian as well. So here on Live Now from Fox, we have you covered when it comes to this major hurricane. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. We have several of these kind of vantage points in and around Western Florida on the Gulf side, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Tampa, and you can see some of the dark clouds as we await arrival of Hurricane Ian at a Category 3 level strength right now. It remains to be seen on what strength it will make landfall at. Some are saying, like Regina we just spoke with, Category 3 or 4, but that remains to be seen as well. So we have these Live Now looks. We, of course, have our XRAD weather system about this major storm, really the largest named hurricane this Atlantic season. Remember, all last week we were covering the onslaught of Hurricane Fiona on Puerto Rico, on Bermuda, on the Dominican Republic. And then it worked its way up near northeastern Canada. But this is going to be the first one to impact the mainland United States, Florida specifically. Other states, though, are being cautious as well. Georgia has issued a state of emergency. South Carolina had a briefing as well about what their plan of action is. And, of course, at the federal level as well, the administrator of FEMA briefing reporters today in the White House press briefing in the briefing room about what the federal response is going to be. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you just heard, I did join the president in his conversation with the 3 mayors in Florida. And what he spoke about with them was making sure that he understood what their needs were, and he wanted to hear from them on what their potential impacts were going to be. He asked about their progress with the mandatory evacuation orders that are in place, and he really wanted to make sure that the mayors knew that he has committed the full force of the federal family to make sure that we are there to support them in what they need, and that they can reach out to me, they can reach out to him anytime with any needs that they may have in the aftermath of this storm. So a little bit about the storm. As of this morning, the National Hurricane Center upgraded Hurricane Ian to a Category 3 storm, which means that's about 125-mile-an-hour winds. Ian is moving toward western Florida at approximately 12 miles per hour, and at this time we are expecting landfall somewhere between Fort Myers and Tampa. By the time it reaches the shores of Florida, the storm is going to slow down to approximately 5 miles per hour. And this is significant because what this means is that Floridians are going to experience the impacts from this storm for a very long time. I can tell you that our biggest concern as we wait for this storm to make landfall is storm surge. And I will note that storm surge is a leading cause of hurricane-related fatalities. Just in 2018, when Hurricane Michael impacted the Florida Panhandle, there were 5 recorded fatalities as a result of storm surge. So therefore, if people are told to evacuate by their local officials, please listen to them. The decision you choose to make may mean the difference between life and death. We won't just see storm surge, though, on the western coast of Florida. Hurricane Ian's path is also going to bring some storm surge to the eastern coast, somewhere near the Daytona to the Jacksonville area. In addition to the storm surge, we are also going to see significant rainfall with the possibility of up to 25 inches in some isolated parts of Florida. And as always, there's always a possibility for tornadoes. So the main message I have for everyone in Florida is that this is going to impact everyone in different ways. So you need to stay focused. I did speak with Governor DeSantis on Friday to hear his main concerns and his priorities for the response and the preparedness actions. And we immediately began moving resources and personnel in when President Biden signed Governor DeSantis' pre-landfall emergency declaration request on Saturday. This made sure that we were able to immediately start supporting the governor's concerns that he relayed to me. The preparation for this storm has been extensive and it has been coordinated. It has been a coordinated effort between FEMA, our federal, our state, and our nonprofit partners. So a little bit about some of that forward-leaning posture that we've put in place. Search and rescue, we know that this is going to be a priority. We have established a search and rescue coordination group that's going to be in Miami, and it includes members from FEMA's urban search and rescue teams, the Coast Guard, the Department of Defense, the Department of the Interior, as well as the state of Florida. These teams are going to coordinate search and rescue efforts by land, by air, and by sea. We have also pre-staged 128,000 gallons of fuel for immediate deployment, and we have moved a variety of generators of all sizes and types to help restore power to critical infrastructure after the storm passes. The Army Corps of Engineers has also pre-staged 300 personnel to conduct power and fuel assessments as soon as the storm passes. And we have 3.7 million meals and 3.5 million liters of water that are staged in Alabama. There are also multiple volunteer organizations that are postured and prepared to support feeding operations as soon as it is safe to do so. The Red Cross, they have established 29 shelters right now for evacuees, and they are also prepared to open an additional 60 shelters if needed. And we have 200 ambulances from our FEMA contract that are already in the state working side by side with local officials, and we have 4 federal medical teams on standby. So while we are postured and ready to support Florida as they prepare for the impacts of Hurricane Ian, I want to make clear that FEMA's ongoing support to Puerto Rico's recovery efforts from Hurricane Fiona, as well as Alaska's recovery from Typhoon Merbok, is still ongoing. We remain focused on helping Puerto Rico restore critical services like power and water, and our staff remain engaged with families to help them through the application process. And I'm happy to say just now that the final 4 municipalities in Puerto Rico were just added for individual assistance, so now the entire Commonwealth has that available to them. Our teams in Alaska are also helping the state complete damage assessments and addressing emergency repairs as the state is preparing for their nearing freeze-up as the winter season approaches. As far as Hurricane Ian's path, it has become more defined, but as with any hurricane, it can still be unpredictable. This means that it is more important than ever that communities inside and outside of that projected path that you see, that you stay vigilant. And so my message to those who may be watching at home, get ready and do not underestimate the potential that this storm can bring. Know where you are going to get your information. Listen to your local officials and heed their advice. They are trying to keep you safe. Have a plan to communicate with your family. Finally, FEMA and our partners are here. We are ready and we are focused on meeting the needs of those that we are charged to serve, but we need the help of everyone that we are charged, that everyone at home, to be as prepared as they can be. I am confident that we have the right team in place as we work this emergency response to Hurricane Ian, and together we have the capability to meet whatever threats may come our way.
Okay, we'll take a couple questions. Thank you, Director Criswell. You briefly mentioned Puerto Rico. There are still 750,000 customers without power in Puerto Rico. I know you authorized just in June $600 million, I believe, for an equipment for rebuilding the power grid there. There was something like $10 billion approved back in 2020. What's the status of the efforts to try to rebuild Puerto Rico's power grid, and had any of that taken place before this latest storm?
Yeah, I was just in Puerto Rico maybe about 3 weeks ago checking on the recovery from Hurricane Maria, and what I saw when I was there is one cohesive team between the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and the federal family that has been really focused on all of the recovery efforts, but primarily the power restoration. When we were there just last week checking on the impacts from Hurricane Fiona, what I saw there is they were putting power back as quickly as they could, but I think the important piece and what really stood out to me is what I saw them as they were repairing the down power poles. They were bringing back more resilient. They were putting them back with more resilient poles to withstand future impacts like we saw from Hurricane Fiona. We are committed to continuing to work with the governor of Puerto Rico in his efforts to make sure that we can rebuild this grid in a way that's actually going to be more resilient for future impacts.
How long do you think it'll take to rebuild the grid?
I think that we have done a lot of work in making sure that we've taken the time right now to do the plans, or the Commonwealth has, to do the plans to make sure that as they are rebuilding it, it's going to be more resilient. I think that the time, we'll get back to you on what the time frame is, but it takes time, right? Recovery never as fast as anybody wants it to be, but we will continue to work with them and expedite anything that we can to speed up that recovery.
Has the administration, or will the administration, waive the Jones Act that would allow for a diesel carrying ship to dock there in Puerto Rico to help provide necessary provisions of diesel oil to those there?
Yeah, we are committed to doing everything that we can within our legal authority to support the people of Puerto Rico. And we know that the Jones Act waiver is one of those things. We have a legal obligation to ensure that each waiver request meets the legal requirements of Congress. And so any final determination on that will be made by the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Given the pressure we've heard from the Puerto Ricans and the governor in that territory right now, what time frame should they anticipate that decision should be made, given the urgent need for that oil?
I know that they are actively working on that approval process or that consideration right now, and so I don't have a time frame for you right now.
And just a curiosity, well, I know we've asked before, you spoke to several mayors down there. One of the mayors said that one of the primary concerns was complacency. I'm curious, the president spoke to big leaders. First question to you is about complacency. The second is, you've spoken to the governor of the state. Why hasn't the president yet? Or is there a scheduled call for the two men to speak, obviously, as they're the preeminent leaders of the country and of that state?
I do have concerns about complacency. We're talking about impacts in a part of Florida that hasn't seen a major direct impact in nearly 100 years. There's also parts of Florida where there's a lot of new residents that have never experienced this type of threat. So my message to them is still take this very seriously, listen to your local officials, and those Floridians that have been through this before, help your neighbors that may have not had to go through this. Heeding the advice of your local officials is the most important. And as far as the conversation, the president directed me to contact the governor early on before we even did the declaration. I did that. My regional administrator is with the governor right now, making sure that we're understanding what the needs are, and our focus is on the current life safety needs that need to be met.
Can you describe just the level of communication with state officials, and have there been anything unusual or any challenges with that? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think the communication that we have had with the state officials has been excellent. My regional administrator out of Region 4, Gracia Check, she is in Florida. She got there yesterday. She has been embedded at the state AOC, working with the state emergency management director one-on-one to make sure we're understanding what their needs are. Again, she's traveling with the governor to a few areas today to make sure we're understanding what those needs. We've had a long relationship with Florida. Our Region 4 has had a great partnership with all of the emergency management team there. They've done a lot of work with the different municipalities and the counties, and I think the relationship is very strong.
Is there anything different about this preparation compared to how FEMA normally prepares for hurricanes that approach landfall? Is there anything particular about the strength of this storm or where it's going to land that has changed how you prepare for it?
I don't know if I would say it's changed how we prepare for it. I would say under this administration, the president has given me very clear direction that we are going to lean in and we are not going to wait to provide assistance. And that's exactly what we're doing for this one. That's what we have done for the previous hurricanes that we experienced last year as well. We understand that this is going to have some significant impacts, and we want to make sure that we have the right resources in place ahead of time to be able to respond immediately when it's safe to do so.
Thanks. Related to Alex's last question, I mean, how has FEMA adapted its storm planning preparation or procedures to deal with increasingly rapid intensification of hurricanes? I mean, does it make it harder to respond to these?
I don't know if it makes it harder to respond. I think where the difficulty comes in with this rapid intensification is the time that's available to notify the public to take the necessary action to protect themselves. What I find is that we have less time for states to give evacuation orders because of the rapid intensification of these storms. But what we're doing, and what I did here, is contacted the governor on Friday to make sure that he knew we were ready to support his pre-landfall emergency needs, and giving him the assurance that we would have funding available to support his actions, but also our ability to bring in the federal family to be ready to respond to them.
You mentioned the ongoing operations in Puerto Rico and the recovery efforts there. Are you concerned that your agency is stretched thin right now dealing with that and preparing for what's coming to Florida right now? Do you have the resources and staff to handle the second storm?
So we do have a lot of events that are going on right now. We're still supporting the recovery in Kentucky, and we're supporting the current recovery going on in Puerto Rico. We have a very talented and dedicated work staff, team of emergency managers, and we have enough people right now to come in and support the response for this, and then we will work to identify what the recovery needs are once we understand what the damages are. But we are more than postured to be able to support this response.
We heard the president say last week that the federal government will cover 100% of the recovery for the next month in Puerto Rico. Do you have an estimate yet, a ballpark of what that's going to cost for Puerto Rico?
I don't have that estimate yet, but it covers all of the different emergency protective measures, debris removal. There was a significant amount of debris removal that needed to take place. You have their overtime costs that they may have incurred over that. As far as a dollar assessment, I don't have that yet.
No dollar assessment yet.
I don't have it yet. We can certainly see if we have a better estimate and get back to you.
Just to follow up.
I just told I just want to return to what Peter had asked about Governor DeSantis. In the past, President Biden, has made calls to governors in situations of natural disasters. Kay Ivey in Alabama, or Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas, or the governor in Texas. Is there any? Can you articulate, I guess, how those determinations are made and why it hasn't been made in this case to have the president call the governor?
Yeah, the president is very focused on making sure that the federal family has the right resources available to support this. That is why I contacted the governor right away, and we have a team of my senior leadership that are embedded with the governor to make sure that we're supporting that. Our focus today is making sure that we have the right measures in place to support the life-saving activities that need to happen. Any conversations afterwards will need to be, we need to see what the damages are.
But he's made conversations with the mayors, so is there any reason why not the governor?
Again, we have a strong team that's in place supporting the governor right now, working side by side with him and his staff. We'll continue to stay engaged with him.
Yeah, thanks. Just a follow-up to that. Normally, presidents call governors or the governors call presidents, but the only thing that really, during hurricanes, the only real question I really want answered is it in any way the fact that they haven't talked? Is there any way that it's impeded efforts of the federal government or FEMA to implement plans in Florida? And if so, what would they be?
No, we are very focused on what the needs of Florida is right now. We do not bring politics into our ability to respond to these disasters. We are going to support whatever Governor DeSantis asks of us. We signed his emergency declaration within hours of him sending it in. We'll continue to do that as we see what the impacts of this storm are.
So the communication between the president and the governor has no impact on how you all operate?
Zero.
Just on the trajectory of the storm, I know you said that you expect it to make landfall somewhere on the west coast. Is there an expectation that could change in the coming, day or two? And if it were to make landfall somewhere else that isn't the area you described, what steps would need to be taken in order for those resources, I guess, to get quickly moved to other areas? And
is the agency preparing for that?
Yeah, I think that's an important question, right? We have a tendency to really focus on the cone and where it's going to make landfall. But as I talked about in my remarks, we are going to see impacts across the state of Florida, whether it's inland flooding from the large amount of rain that we're going to see, tornadoes and tornado watches that we may see in the southern part of the state later today, to the storm surge and the hurricane force winds that may impact the communities near landfall. We are postured and we are moving our equipment in a place that can support all parts of Florida because we know that there are going to be impacts across the state.
And just in terms of the agency's resources, FEMA has obviously been involved in working with the issue of influx of migrants across the country. Has that in any way put a strain on the agency and its resources and personnel, or do you at this moment feel like you have what you need to do that as well as natural disaster relief work?
Yeah, the resources that we are providing to support the influx of the migrant flow is through a program called our Emergency Food and Shelter Program. It's a reimbursable grant program, and that's the main source of our involvement right now.
When you talk about complacency, what are you concerned about? Are people refusing to heed evacuation orders?
Yeah, what I worry about when I think about complacency is that if it's been a near miss in the past, they feel like they can just ride this out. I've been through this before, and I've had no issues, and so I can do it again. That's a dangerous way to think. You need to listen to your local officials because the storm surge, 10 feet, maybe in some areas higher, is going to be significant, and you put 20 inches of rain on top of that inland, you need to be able to listen to your local officials, right? And I think what we have and what we see is people that have not had any impacts, they think that that's not going to happen again. Take it seriously. Do not underestimate the potential that this storm can bring.
Okay, last two.
Thanks, Corinne. Administrator, thank you. So in the aftermath, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at the lowest level since 37 years, and you said you've set aside some gas for Florida. Is there a concern that the reserve is not high enough now to handle the aftermath of this emergency and other hurricanes that could come?
I don't have any concerns at this point that we're going to have the ability to handle the fuel needs that we're going to need in Florida. We will continue to assess after the storm passes to see what the impacts are. We'll make sure that we're putting measures in place to support any gaps that we might identify.
The season, you think you're covered?
It all depends on what the impacts from this storm might bring, and so we need to do those assessments after the storm passes.
Okay, last question, way in the back.
Thank you. The storm is expected to travel north. Have you had any conversations with the governors of South Carolina and Georgia about the potential impacts there? What are you most concerned about?
Yeah, I spoke with both governors yesterday to get a better idea of what they were concerned about. They were stepping up their postures to make sure that they were prepared to support any impacts that they might see. As the storm track continues to change, again, our regional office will continue to engage with them, and we'll move resources into there if needed, and we'll stay in close contact with the governors and their staff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we were just listening in there at the White House briefing to FEMA Administrator Deanna Criswell updating the public and reporters in the room about what the federal response is going to be to Hurricane Ian. We also have a live now look at the White House at the moment. As we did hear from President Biden on Hurricane Ian today, also a live now look there in Washington at the U.S. Capitol, where Hurricane Ian has postponed the January 6th House Select Committee hearing that was supposed to take place tomorrow morning. So we're not going to be obviously covering that. We are going to be talking about politics a little bit later on tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, with the debut of our show, Road to the Election, with yours truly, talking about all the issues that matter to voters in the run-up to November the 8th. Of course, today is a little different. Breaking news changes everything. We'll be talking about some of these major Florida election contests and how Hurricane Ian might or might not be impacting them. In the meantime, let's go out back to our X-Red weather system right now. You can see there, Category 3 strength right now, 125 mile per hour winds as it approaches western Florida, and hotels are closing. The Tampa airport is closed. Gas stations are out of gas. Grocery and hardware stores are full, and parking lots are not full. And so right now we want to go out to Fox's Ashley Soriano. She's joining us live from Tampa, Florida. She's tracking the storm with us as well. Ashley, good to see you. What do we know?
Hey, good evening, Andrew. Well, right now in downtown Tampa, it's not raining just yet, but that rain is sure to pick up tonight, and the winds have already picked up. And people I spoke with here who live here, they tell me that the threat of a hurricane is routine for them, but this one, they say, feels different. The 2022 hurricane season in the U.S. has been unusually inactive. That's changing this week as Florida braces for Hurricane Ian, which is expected to strengthen to a Category 4. Robert's Christmas Wonderland in Clearwater, Florida, has been open for 50 years. The owner began boarding up his windows Tuesday morning.
You're crazy not to. It can be devastating, or it can be controlled to some degree. If you read what's on the boards we put up, we had the name of the last hurricane up there. We said, don't get on Santa's list, you know, and they updated it for this one.
The shop sells Christmas decorations, and it relies on the few months leading up to the holiday for most of its sales.
We're like a farmer. We work all year just to have our very short season. If the building and the merchandise are destroyed, you know, the game's over for this year.
Forecasters predict a dangerous storm surge.
This is a heavy one. I lived here all my life. I'm a resident here, born and raised. This looks kind of bad.
The Barefoot Bay Hotel Resort in Clearwater Beach closed Tuesday afternoon. Most of the rooms are downstairs, and the owner says she's worried it won't be there after the hurricane hits.
This time I think we're going to definitely be underwater, but there's nothing we can do. We can't hold the ocean back. It is what it is.
As of 5 p.m. Eastern tonight, hurricane warnings have expanded more inland to include Orlando. In fact, their airport closes tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. And Disney World announced that it's closing its theme parks Wednesday and Thursday. So definitely a rapidly changing situation. Andrew.
You know, Ashley, offline we were seeing you kind of talk to some people, go by. Is the sense there that there's just no one around? It's deserted. I see some traffic kind of behind you. You're in downtown Tampa. Are people getting out of this soon enough, though?
You know what? I think that the Tampa area was a little slow to evacuate people to leave. When I was on the interstate earlier today, changing hotels, for reference, I am now in my third hotel. The first two closed and evacuated. But in my move, I saw lots of traffic moving north, more inland. So people have started to evacuate. Offline, as you mentioned, I just spoke to someone who does not have a home at this time. And he asked me, what category storm is this? He wasn't aware, and he thanked me for letting him know. He's definitely concerned about that hurricane moving over into a Category 4. Andrew.
All right, Ashley Soriano, stay safe. We'll be speaking to you again as this storm will make landfall about, Ashley, this time tomorrow, Wednesday. Ashley, thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, right now we want to put up this tweet from the National Weather Service. Take a look at this because this is an aspect to this storm as well. Tornado warnings have been put into effect in parts of Miami and parts of Broward County. This from the National Weather Service in Miami. They say a tornado is intensifying and will likely impact west metro portions of Broward County, included in this polygon there you can see. Let's go out to Fox Weather. They are also tracking some of these tornado warnings as well as the outer bands of Ian are spawning some of these tornadoes. Let's listen in.
So again, just an indication that what we've been tracking numerous times so far throughout the afternoon and evening, most of the storms that have looked like this have thankfully been out over the Everglades, but now we're starting to see some of these storms move through heavily populated areas. So this is a more significant threat that will be approaching 595 and then eventually farther off to the north if it can maintain its intensity up to 869, perhaps closer to Tamarack and Coral Springs. So you do see that little notch in there, unfortunately, and that is where we see the rotating part of this off to the east of 75. This is a significant threat, and unfortunately, it's one that we're going to face likely through the rest of this evening and then over the next couple of days. As this storm system slows down, these outer bands will stay very intense, just like this. These are areas that have needed rain. Now they've been getting soaked more recently. You see a torrential rain threat, which could likely lead to some flash flooding as you see repeated bands moving through. And you also see some of the rotation that's within this storm. That is the imminent threat, the tornado that was spotted on the ground with these. And Kendall, I just want to point out again, with these are quick spin-ups. They can wrap up very quickly. Oftentimes they don't last all that long, but this signature is clearly still there, so that's still a threat.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And Ian, what I'm most concerned with is all of the residents that are trying to evacuate right now, that are making their way on very highly traveled highways and interstates, I-75, I-95. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, and this is the concern. This is why we advised residents to get out well in advance of this system, because although we are still awaiting on the actual landfall, which will occur sometime tomorrow evening, we are dealing with the effects tonight. And this is very serious, as we have an observed tornado right now. This is for southern Broward County until 7:45 p.m. Eastern. The good news, however, the latest scan that we are just now getting in does show a little bit of a weakening trend with our shear. So notice, we'll take it back one previous scan. You're starting to see that area of red that was indicating stronger shear. Now the latest scan shows that it is slowly starting to weaken. So that is good. Like Ian just mentioned, these outer rain bands, they spawn these quick spin-up tornadoes that don't last very long. However, they can be extremely devastating. So, I mean, it means business, and we're putting a storm track on this because it's moving to the north at 25 miles per hour, meaning that it is going to be making its way over Plantation Acres by 7:47 p.m., Coral Springs by 8:14 p.m., Kensington Manor, 8:21 as well. So you're looking at that live camera right there of Sunrise, Florida, and you can see this is just north of Davie. Look at all of those headlights. I mean, it's good to see all of that traffic. Hopefully these are our residents that are making their way out of Florida. However, this is what they're having to run into, because if you are not staying tuned in with us, the latest changing weather happening right now, you would not even know that we actually have a tornado right now causing damage just to the southeast of you. So that's that live shot. That was just to the north of Davie. Here's Davie right here. The system is moving really pretty much due north at this time, right around 25 miles per hour. So that means it is going to be, there's that couplet on velocity. It is going to be, if it holds together, eventually crossing over 595. Now, it does still have several miles to go, and it does show a weakening trend. That is the good news. However, as of right now, it is still a very serious situation. If you are still at home, you have not evacuated yet, you need to be in your tornado safe place. The best place to be in the event of a tornado, if you do not have a basement or storm shelter, which I know a lot of folks do not have in this part of the country, you need to be in the most interior room possible of your home, away from all doors and windows. We do have this tornado watch that is going to stay in effect until 5 a.m. Eastern for all of the counties shaded in red. And I would not be surprised. In fact, it probably will happen here sooner rather than later, that we'll see this watch expanded further to the north as we are really watching the impacts. You have to think about this as we are watching Ian continues to work its way to the north and to the east. That's where we will be dealing with those outer rain bands. And for that reason, the National Weather Service will then issue those tornado watches as we see continuing. Ian makes its way further to the north. But right now, West Palm Beach over to Naples, Key Largo, Miami, you are the locations that are under that active tornado watch until 5 a.m. Eastern. This is what it looks like in terms of our shear and what we're dealing with. So notice the arrows at the surface. So these are our orange arrows. Notice where they are originating. So they're really coming from the south-southeast. Now, notice our winds at 10,000 feet. These are our blue arrows. They're really originating kind of due.
You were just listening into our Fox weather coverage. We appreciate their continued cover of this storm. I want to give you this graphic right now here on Live Now from Fox. And, of course, follow Fox Weather America's weather team. They're also tracking Hurricane Ian as it approaches Florida here. Don't forget to download that app. And don't forget to go to foxweather.com as well. And now we're going to more of our coverage from Florida in Fort Myers. And we are now joined by Robert Ray there on the scene. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight, Robert. What can you see from the scene there in Fort Myers as Hurricane Ian approaches that bank?
And yes, this is Fort Myers Beach, and we are getting those rain bands, those outer rain bands, and some gusts here tonight. As you can see, deteriorating in front of us. And take a look at this. If Rick looks down here, you start to see those palm trees sway because of the gusty winds coming up from Hurricane Ian, and some of the businesses and the bars with sandbags that are already put out. But here's the problem: that's not going to be enough to stop this storm surge. We are expecting upwards, potentially 8 to 12 feet, maybe more, here on Fort Myers Beach, as tomorrow morning the wind will be gusting, and by mid-morning, perhaps even early afternoon, if you are not off this key, this island, and you have a vehicle here, it may be swept away. What you see right here could look totally different by tomorrow night after Ian goes parallel. Right now, the trajectory is for it to be a 3 or a 4 category right off the coast, brushing Fort Myers, and that's the dirty side, as it counterclockwise is where those strong winds come in. We're going to see wind damage, we're going to see flooding, and I will say, we as a team right now, myself and my photographer Rick, by mid-morning tomorrow, as we assess this and we're live, we are going to leave this key. It will not be safe. There is not one high garage here or anywhere to keep a vehicle to stop you from that much storm surge. So we will cross the bridge, we will go over to mainland and find shelter there and continue to report live as this incredible energy in this storm comes in. I cannot stress enough to anyone watching this: listen to the officials. I mean, the emergency management director of Florida told Neil Cavuto a couple hours ago that there's no time left. You have to evacuate. The system is on its way. We certainly feel it, and I hope that people watching understand the gravity of this situation. This is as serious as it gets for this part of Florida, and people should understand. As a team, we are nervous out here covering this, and I've done this a lot. And I have to say, our guard is up, head is on a swivel, we're watching the radar, and we are out of this key as soon as we can tomorrow morning when conditions really start to amp up, Andy.
Definitely, and we're watching, like so many people are, the track of Ian and Fort Myers a little bit south there of Tampa. And when you see a radar and you're seeing these updates, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the track of the eye or the weather band? What are you looking at, Robert?
I'm looking at impacts. Right now, you know, even though we don't know exactly where Ian is going to make its ashore, where the eye is going to come ashore. We don't know that. They have an idea. The meteorologists have an idea. But the impacts, where we're at when Ian is coming up right off of the coast here as a Cat 3 or Cat 4, when it goes counterclockwise, that is the nasty side or the dirty side of the storm. And that's exactly where we're at. And so we could be seeing wind speeds up to 130 miles an hour, maybe even more, and then all that water being pushed in from the Gulf, and that's the surge. The anywhere between 8 to 12 plus more potentially coming up over the beach into areas that I'm standing in on this key, and even past the inlet in the mainland. The surge will continue even over there, the flooding. I mean, this is really a plethora of all the congruences coming together, and it's not good. There's really not a good silver lining on this at all, and that's why I keep stressing to people, if you've not gotten out, you really need to. You just do. Get your vehicles out of here. They may not make it. Odds are they won't.
Definitely, and thank you so much for this coverage. And I was talking to Will Nunley last night, also here on Fox Weather, and he said a lot of the infrastructure in the Clearwater Beach area is new over the last decade. Is it a similar scenario in Fort Myers, where it's continuing to be built up in Fort Myers and maybe not necessarily prepared for a storm or not seen a storm like this before?
I mean, yes, this area is booming, you know, from Naples to Fort Myers, up to Sarasota and Tampa. Yeah, absolutely. So many people have migrated down to Florida since the beginning of the pandemic for various reasons. And I mean, yes, the building codes have advanced, certainly. But, you know, no matter how much you prepare, when you have a storm this strong, with all these elements, the wind, the storm surge, the rain, there's really not a whole lot you can do to stop the energy and Mother Nature of something like this. You just have to make sure that you're in an area that's not going to get pummeled by, you know, 10, 12, 15 feet of water and wind debris. Again, where I'm standing right now, like these sandbags, not enough to protect it. Of course not. All of that stuff inside that bar is likely going to be just blown all over the place in this area with wind like that. Again, the dirty side, the nasty side of this storm, even though it may not come ashore here, it's the impacts of a storm this big. So dangerous, Andy.
Thank you, Robert Ray, for your coverage here as Hurricane Ian approaches Florida there in Fort Myers, reporting live for us here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you so much, and please, to you and your photographer, stay safe down there.
Thanks, Andy.
All
we
right.
will.
Thank you so much, Robert Ray, as we continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Of course, don't forget to tune in to Fox Weather as we continue this coverage. Here is a QR code to scan, and don't forget to download the app at Fox Weather, America's weather team, as we continue to follow Hurricane Ian here on Live Now from Fox as well. Here's one more look at our Fox XRAD computer model here as we go to break here, but obviously it is bearing down on the west coast of Florida. We're going to have much more coming up after this quick break. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. We're continuing to follow Hurricane Ian as it churns toward the Gulf side of Florida. Of course, it is the cone of uncertainty there as we're continuing to watch it here on Live Now from Fox. And a lot of people, we've heard from different representatives from the state of Florida. And now I'm going to be joined by Michelle Rayner, a state representative down there in Florida. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox as we continue to watch Hurricane Ian. First, just take me through what have you been doing the last few days to get prepared for this storm and make sure yourself and your community is ready for this.
Was born and raised in Florida, so I've been here for 41 years off and on. So at first, when you hear of hurricanes, you're kind of like, okay, like, is this really going to happen? Fortunately, Tampa Bay has been spared. But when we really saw that this hurricane was actually, headed for us, it was time to jump in action. One, making sure that folks had sandbags and the things that they needed in order to make sure that their homes were protected. We have a large senior population, so making sure that they were taken care of as far as if they were in evacuation zones, that they were able to evacuate and being able to prepare travel for them. Also, additionally, making sure that folks had food and other things that they needed, making sure that they knew where their shelters were. My office has been providing up-to-date information via Twitter and also via email and also on other social media sites. So just making sure that we have the information and making sure we're in their community and people know that they can put their hands on me if they need me and get the help that they need.
Well, and thank you for joining us and giving those updates, especially on social media, where a lot of people are just tuning in because that's where they get a lot of their information. What is the message about these preparations, about these evacuations that are underway for a lot of the constituents you represent? What are the messages about that?
You know, the message is one, to take the storm seriously. You know, we have seen time and time again what happens when we don't take storms seriously. Also making sure that, you know, if you're an evacuation site, if you are able to, please evacuate, because if you don't, it becomes a lot harder for emergency officials and services to get to you. Also making sure that if there is, you know, the opportunity for you to have, you know, get medicine, that you're able to get that, and just making sure that people have all of the information that they need in order to be able to weather this storm. Also, I think, Andy, the thing that we're also focused on is that when this storm makes landfall, because it will, what is the impact going to be to our district, to our area, and making sure that we are able to actively meet the recovery needs of people in this district, in this community, and that we're able to get us back up and running. So that's really kind of what I've been focusing on, working with our local leaders, working with my counterparts in the state legislature, and also in the governor's office. You know, this is not the time to be partisan. This is not the time to score political points. This is the time right now to make sure that we are all hands on deck, making sure our community and our people are taken care of.
Definitely, and we've seen a lot of press conferences from different people in government, from Ron DeSantis to Jane Castor there, the mayor of Tampa. How closely are you guys working together to make sure everyone is prepared, but like you said, also in the aftermath, to make sure everyone can recover from when this storm does finally subside?
Listen, Andy, I feel like my phone doesn't even have a chance to charge because I am on it, and making sure that I've been talking with mayors and commissioners, the governor's office, also talking with, you know, EO and FDAM and other officials, making sure that they know that there's a constant communication, but also having a conversation with our utility companies, being in touch with FPL and TECO and Duke, and making them sure, and not only asking what, you know, they can do for me, but how I can be of assistance to them as well on the ground as well. You know, so I'm fully prepared, you know, after this thing makes landfall, to be out on the ground, to be working with our partners, to be making sure that people have what they need. I really believe that you don't just do public service by getting on Twitter and on Facebook, but you're actually with the people and you're making sure that they have the things that they need. And I got to tell you, we have a really great team. I'm, like I said, I'm a lifelong Floridian, and in these times, we see what we're made of, and we're seeing that we're made of some really good stuff. And I know that we're going to be able to get through this as a state and as a community.
Definitely, and don't forget to keep that phone charged, because obviously with the power, we're not sure what's going on there. So you got to make sure that phone is charged. And I was going to ask you, because as a Floridian, a native Floridian, but Tampa really hasn't seen a major hurricane in some time. Do you think people are maybe a little bit more prepared, or how do you think people are reacting knowing that Tampa, the area of Tampa, hasn't really seen a hurricane of this strength in some time?
Listen, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that folks are, you know, somewhat like, oh, it's fine. Like, we've been here before, and we'll be okay. And I think folks are like, oh, wait, you know, some of our leading meteorologists are saying, listen, like, you know, we're panicking. Like, you need to make sure you have what you need. So that's why I've been urging folks, like, you know, as someone who is a lifelong Floridian, as someone who was kind of looking at the storm, like, what is this really going to do? That this is not the time to play it out and pretend that we are at-home meteorologists and are at-home experts. But this is the time to really, if you need to evacuate, if you need to make sure you have sandbags and board up your houses. And we've been providing information so people can go to Twitter at RepMKR FEMA.org, up-to-date Twitter information. Also, you can sign up for email updates. My office has been sending them out 3 times a day. And there's also direct contact information, and we will make sure that you get in touch with who you need to get in touch with.
Definitely. As Hurricane Ian bears down on Florida and the community there, we wish you nothing but the best. And thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Andy. And you guys stay safe. Take care.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you following along here, and we're going to continue on Live Now from Fox. That was, of course, Florida State Representative Michelle Rayner. We appreciate her so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox as we continue to track this storm, Hurricane Ian, as it slowly approaches and will potentially make landfall in the next 24 or so hours. We will continue to follow this very major story here on Live Now from Fox as we continue on here on Live Now from Fox. We're going to continue to follow some of these big stories from around the country and get more of an update from different offices, including in Hillsborough County this morning. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break and then get into some of those big updates next. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. We're continuing to follow Hurricane Ian as it approaches Florida there as we continue to watch on our XRAD computer weather monitor. We've seen updates from various government officials, including Governor Ron DeSantis, the mayor of Tampa, Jane Castor. We just spoke with the state representative out of Florida, Michelle Rayner, and we appreciate her giving us the latest updates as this is the calm before the storm. We're going to continue on and people she represents in Hillsborough County. Let's take a look at a press conference from earlier today as they prepare for Hurricane Ian to make landfall.
Good morning. I'm Tim Dudley, and I am the Director of Hillsborough County Office of Emergency Management. I'll be providing a brief update on Hurricane Ian. I'm joined this morning by County Administrator Bonnie Wise, and I'd like to also welcome Sheriff Chronister, Sherry Jacobs from TICO, Adelie LeGrand from Hart, and Chief Dennis Jones, Hillsborough County Fire Rescue Chief. We are ramping up operations here at the ELC in response to a major Hurricane Ian. As it clears Cuba and begin its track towards the west coast of Florida, I want everyone to know that our team is ready, they're locked in, and they're focused. They know the stakes are high and that the residents are very concerned. Our job is to protect you before, during, and after the storm. Yes, we will experience impacts, more than likely significant from Hurricane Ian, and we are ready to face them and respond accordingly very quickly. The hurricane is a Category 3 now and expected to strengthen on its approach. There is still uncertainty on the track, and it could shift again, but we are increasingly facing a great possibility of being directly impacted. Now the County Administrator, Bonnie Wise, has a major announcement.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'm Bonnie Wise, the County Administrator, and I want to thank all of you in the news for helping our residents be informed about this very serious situation that we're facing in Hillsborough County. Yesterday, we issued a mandatory evacuation order for Zone A and recommended a voluntary evacuation for Zone B. Due to the growing intensity and size of the major Hurricane Ian and the increasing likelihood that Hillsborough County will be significantly impacted, we are amending the voluntary evacuation for Zone B to mandatory evacuation. Just to be clear, the voluntary evacuation for Zone B is being upgraded to a mandatory evacuation. This new evacuation will begin at noon today. It affects about 90,000 additional residents. As of now, all residents in Zone A, Zone B, those in mobile or manufactured homes, and those in low-lying areas prone to flooding must be evacuated by 9 p.m. tonight. That's worth repeating. 9 p.m. tonight, everybody who is evacuating needs to be where they are going. This affects about 390,000 residents in total. Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, HART, will operate in the zones with mandatory evacuations until 9 p.m. The service will be fare-free. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of heeding our evacuation orders. We are here to protect you and your family, and it is in your best interest to evacuate if you live in these specific areas. And remember, you don't need to go to a shelter. Ask a relative, a friend, a coworker who lives inland if you could stay with them. Also, please double check your hurricane kits once again to make sure you have enough supplies and medicine for you and your family to last at least 7 days. I want you to know that you are not facing this alone. We are in this together. We will get through this together. Please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. I want to underscore what she just said. It's vital that you listen. To use us and evacuate. It is for your safety and the safety of your family. Now for some additional updates. We have opened more than 45 emergency evacuation shelters, and so far we have more than 600 people in the shelters and several pets, and we expect a dramatic increase today. As of this morning, before today's operations began, we had distributed more than 64,000 sandbags. We continue to mobilize resources, assets, at the Florida State Fairgrounds. We are getting calls from people who need help the most and get into shelters, and we are actively assisting those folks. Again, an important note about shelters. Yes, we will provide a safe place for you to go and ride out the storm, but it would be better if you sought out family, friends, or even a hotel out of the impact zones to ride out this storm, but we will have a safe place for you to go. These shelters are a last resort. They are for people who truly need to be there and people who have nowhere else to go. And remember, you could be there for several days. Also, I want everybody to know that we are not just focused on the impacts of the approaching storm. We're also looking forward beyond the impacts after the hurricane has passed. We're currently working on the next phase of operations, and they're currently underway. We want to stay ahead of this, and we need to stay ahead of this. We are staying ahead of this. Please stay tuned for updates. Try to do what we can as long as we can, and stay safe. And now I will have comments from Sheriff Cronister.
Thank you, sir. Let me start and begin by thanking our county administrator. Ms. Wise, thank you. Thank you for your diligent efforts and everything that you do with the partnerships that are represented and so many more that are solely focused on keeping our communities safe. I also want to take just a moment to thank the 4,000 employees of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, Chief Dennis Jones, and every employee with Hillsborough County Fire Rescue who kissed their families goodbye this morning, not knowing that they will see their families for the next several days so they can focus on the community and make sure that this community remains as safe as it can be during such a storm. It's been 101 years since Tampa Bay has experienced a storm of this magnitude. The county administrator does not make these decisions lightly. These decisions are focused on public safety and the preservation of life. I am encouraging everybody who now is in evacuation zone A or zone B to heed the warning. Get your families to safety. There's nothing more important than to protect you and your family's life. I have to tell a quick story here if I can. During the last storm that impacted Tampa not too many years ago, there was an elderly female who called 911. The storm conditions were well into the 60-mile-per-hour range. There was extreme flooding. It was some very poor conditions. The emergency medical services decided that with their high-profile vehicles, it would be too unsafe for their employees to respond. We looked at our deputies. Our deputies were begging, can we please go? Can we please go? I looked at them and I said, I'm not going to stop you from going if you want to respond. Go ahead. 4 of them got the most low-profile vehicle they could get in, and they zipped out as quick as they could to this elderly female's residence. She was oxygen dependent. We had implored, begged the residents, as we're doing now, to go to a safer place. She lost electric. She lost that ability to have that oxygen tank, and even with the quick response of deputy sheriffs rushing her to the hospital, she lost her life. This was a senseless loss of life. I don't want to sit here in front of the microphone 2 days from now talking about senseless loss of life. I don't want any of you to have to go to funerals because you didn't want to feel uncomfortable and have to go stay at a friend's house or go stay at a shelter. The time to act is now. Not a time for panic, but a time to act and get your families to that safe place. Last night I went to bed a little after midnight, and I was so proud to see Interstate 4, Interstate 75 with the traffic jam as much as it was. It's the only time that traffic will make me so happy. You know, you guys, as our community, we are prepared. Please help us be prepared as well. Don't be that individual who picks up the phone and calls for help. I can assure you there's no greater empty feeling than picking up the phone and saying, okay, I'm ready, I need help, and help will not be on the way. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, sir. We'll have comments from Sherry from TICO.
Good morning. Based on the intensity of Hurricane Ian, Tampa Electric would like to prepare our customers to be ready for extended outages. Now, in anticipation of that restoration, Tampa Electric has called in thousands of line workers from other utilities from out of state, from as far away as Texas and Indiana, to help us restore power after the storm has passed and it's safe to work. In addition to that, Tampa Electric is executing a targeted interruption to a small part of downtown. This affects the western edge of downtown Tampa, the area including the Straz Center and surrounding buildings. This area is already evacuated, and this interruption will allow us to shut down that equipment ahead of the storm to help speed restoration after the storm.
Thank you. We'll hear from Adelaide from Hart.
Good morning. Thank you. Again, thank you to Ms. Wise for her leadership and for convening this conversation this morning. I just wanted to quickly specify the routes that will be impacted with the closure of or the termination of our service after 9 p.m. today in both Zones A and Zone B. I'll take my time to read these out, but this information is also on the HART website, which is gohart.org, as well as calling our customer service number at area code 813-254-4278. The routes that are impacted are as follows: Route 7, Route 8, Route 9, Route 10, Route 14, Route 15, Route 16, Route 17, Route 19, Route 24, Route 25, Route 30, Route 31, Route 32, Route 34, Route 39, Route 45, and Route 360. The Tico streetcar is not running today, and it will not be running tomorrow. We'll give you an update as far as when our service comes back online. Just to reiterate, we will stop service on these routes starting at 9 p.m. today. Thank you all, and be safe.
Thank you. Now we'll open up for questions for any of the folks standing up here.
Sheriff, in the case of a mandatory evacuations, we ran into some people who said, we're not going. What do you do? What can you do as far as people who decide, I'm going to squat and wait it out?
Well, certainly under the letter of the law, we can place them under arrest for ignoring the order. That's not our intention. I think that their punishment may be when this storm surge comes, when the copious amounts of water come and they become flooded and we can't get to them. I think that's going to be punishment of unknown, and the loss of electricity is going to be the least of their worries.
And in a case like this, do you have a thought on percentage of who, obviously you want 100%, but
Yeah.
with the compliance of something like this, do you have an idea of what percentage you think will comply?
I don't know exactly what that percentages are. I believe they're extremely high from monitoring the traffic flow that we're seeing. The deputies out at the different various intersections helping with traffic flow, seeing the amount of vehicles coming over from Pinellas County, heeding the warning in that county as well. I think the percentages are high. Everyone I've talked to so far, I haven't spoke to one person that said, listen, I'm staying where I'm at and I'll be here at my own risk. We haven't experienced that. Everyone I've talked to has seen people moving out. And again, I think people sometimes hate the fact that they have to leave the best place where we feel the safest, right, is our home. And I understand that. But I would ask them to look at every employee at Hillsborough County Fire Rescue and every deputy sheriff who's going to be sleeping on the floor of a fire station or a police station. And that's not the most comfortable place they want to be either. But sometimes the most uncomfortable place is the safest place. And we need our public. And again, you bring up a great point. You have to heed the warning. And again, I hate to be that individual who is responsible for a family member who loses their life, or the life that you lose may be your own because you ignored to evacuate. So I'm not worried about going out. We're not going to arrest our way out of some type of evacuation problem. I think they're going to have bigger issues to worry about than any type of legalities.
Do your guys, your girl, women go door to door in a situation like this ahead of time to sort of make sure, hey, are you getting out of here?
Great question. We basically do. They're on their PA systems going through these neighborhoods constantly 24 hours a day, and we'll do it until it's unsafe, announcing that there's an evacuation order in place. Please heed the warning. So we'll do that. But again, understand, we're not throwing anyone out of their homes. If they decide to stay, listen, they're going to do it at their own risk.
Do you have a message for businesses that might stay open?
I don't know if that's a necessary message. Everyone I've saw is boarded up or already shut down. They too have employees that want to get themselves to safety and get their loved ones to safety. We haven't seen anything. And the businesses that we're hoping stay open, like the Publix that are trying to restock and get us those basic essentials, medications that we need, they're doing a great job. We've been in constant communication with them. They have informed me that when it gets to a point where conditions start to worsen, they're going to have to stop service to their community as well. So again, I don't think these are going to be issues that we're going to have. They want to do everything they can to keep their employees safe, just like we do.
Ma'am, from Tico, can you, a little more detail on the targeted power
The targeted interruptions? Yes, so there's one for sure. That is the western edge of downtown. It's the area around the Straz Center and the Barrymore Hotel and that section of town. That one is expected to occur later today, and those buildings are already under evacuation. We are also considering a targeted interruption on the southern tip of downtown, and that includes all of Harbor Island, all of Davis Island, excluding TGH, and the 2 hotels there, the Embassy Suites and the Marriott, and the Transportation Center. That is still under consideration, and we'll be making that decision later today.
Can you give us your name and title?
Sure. Sherry Jacobs, Cherie Jacobs, spokesperson for Tampa Electric.
When you say temporary interruption to Harbor Island and all that, what do you mean by that?
It's a targeted interruption. We're pinpointing equipment that might be at risk for storm surge, and it's proactive. The section on the western edge of downtown would occur later today. The southern tip would likely occur tomorrow. And that is in anticipation of storm surge. So by shutting down the equipment ahead of time, it will help speed restoration on the back end. Sort of like, do I repair my car or do I replace my car? Replacing your car would take longer. So it is in anticipation of speeding restoration to those areas.
You were just listening in as Hillsborough County officials providing an update there. That is a county that represents a lot of Tampa as we continue to follow this on our XRAD weather computer model there as we continue on. As you can see, the cone of uncertainty shifted a little bit to the east as it will approach Florida. And obviously people are still saying make preparations no matter where the cone of uncertainty is because it could shift at any moment. We're going to continue on and keep an update on all these different cameras we're looking at here on Live Now from Fox. You can see all the feeds coming in here at this hour as it's just past 8 o'clock on the East Coast, just past 5 o'clock on the West Coast here. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to follow this major breaking story, and it's only going to get bigger the next few days. Of course, we are making sure everyone is prepared and staying safe, and we are providing updates from different officials, including out of Fort Myers. Here's a tweet from that group as they are. An evacuation notice has been issued for zones A, B, and parts of zone C. Please take advantage of the 14 open shelters in Lee County, which is in Fort Myers, which is south of Tampa and that Hillsborough County, including Dunbar High School. Visit for a complete list of shelters. And I want to give you a bigger look at this map as we heard from Robert Ray, our Fox weather associate, a little bit earlier. He said he was in one of those red regions as he will depart soon, but he was giving us a live report there. As you can see, some low-lying areas in the Fort Myers-Lee County area as they're asking people to evacuate in zones A, and then you can see zone B a little bit further inland, but very low-lying area of Fort Myers. We're going to continue on here and provide an update from Lee County, which Fort Myers sits. Let's get you out to this press conference from earlier in the day here on Live Now from Fox.
Good with your levels? Okay. Looks like everybody's here. Okay, we'll begin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Hammond, and I'm a Lee County Commissioner. I'm joined this morning by Commissioner Kevin Ruane and Commissioner Mike Greenwell, also by our Sheriff, Carmine Marcino, and Dr. Chris Bernier from Lee County School District, our Superintendent, as well as Angela Smith, our Health Officer. This morning, we have been watching the storm overnight. Our team is mobilized in the Emergency Operations Center, as you can see behind you. But given the current forecast track this morning and the storm surge predictions, as well as the flood modeling, we're here this morning to announce evacuation orders for some parts of the county, as well as shelter openings for some parts of the county. To explain the operations and how that's going to happen, I'd like to introduce our County Manager, Roger DeJarlais.
Good morning, everyone. The evacuation this morning is a mandatory evacuation order, and that is as mandatory as can be. We will not be going house to house and forcing people to leave, but we are stressing the importance of people getting out of harm's way based on the surge models. So evacuation will be Zone A. You can look on our website and see exactly where that is, but it is generally all of the low-lying areas that are accustomed to being flooded during the spring tides. And so it's along the coastal area, the barrier islands, and upriver four-ways. But you'll be able to see that on our website. And then part of Zone B as well will be evacuated. You know, parts of that zone are in those low-lying areas as well, and that's south of Veterans Parkway in Cape Coral is in that Zone B area. Also, the evacuation order instructs people in mobile and manufactured homes to shelter elsewhere. When winds above 45, 50, 60 miles an hour, mobile homes are generally not a safe place to be. For those in the evacuation zones, please do not put out your garbage today because it's not going to get picked up and it's just going to get blown all over. There will be 10 emergency shelters opening at about 9 o'clock this morning. We're staffing up as we speak, and you can find a list of all those shelters on Lee County's website, that is leegov.com. United Way partners are prepared to open the emergency information hotline when the shelters open at 9 o'clock. And you all will recall that that's the 211 line. Anyone who needs help in understanding their evacuation zone or what they need to do to finish preparations, 211 is the right number to call. Please do not call 911 unless you have a true emergency. Let me see, a list of those on our website is all, let me see, excuse me. This is 0 dark 30 this morning. You know, I'm usually not coherent this time of day. Oh, all of our shelters are pet friendly. You may recall there was a time when we had just a couple of designated shelters, but people were really not prepared to leave their dogs and cats at home. They're like a member of the family. And we also encourage these shelters are a refuge of last resort. They are not comfortable, so we'd encourage people as their first choice to see if they have relatives or friends outside of the area that's going to be affected by the storm. And you need to know that the EOC now has gone from partial activation to full activation, and we will continue to monitor the storms throughout the day and provide you the information on any of the changing operations as they occur. I'd like to introduce Sheriff Marcino, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being here today. I just want to get a point across that we are going to feel this storm. How badly is still undetermined. My top priority, as always, is keeping everybody safe during this event. We look at it in three ways. It's before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. And before the storm, we try to get that message out to get your non-perishables, secure your homes, and make sure that you're ready for several days without electric if need be. During the storm is most important. We want you to be at your location. We want you to be safe, and also understand, and we stress the fact that once the winds hit a sustained 45 miles per hour, law enforcement, emergency personnel are not going to respond. So God forbid someone does need 911 and they dial, a law enforcement officer is not going to respond until it's safe to. I will ensure absolutely the second it's safe, we will begin answering calls immediately without hesitation in priority. Also, don't leave your homes unless you have to. Sometimes things look like they're safe. Downed power lines, the bridges are, another one. I mean, we are going to let those bridges naturally flow, and we're going to continuously monitor them by patrol and also by the latest and greatest technology at the Real-Time Intelligence Center. But we want you to stay off the roadways. Let's get this storm or whatever it brings us past us to ensure that you get out there and you're safe when you do. The county's done a great job with our shelters. We will be manning the shelters to make sure people are safe. And again, we will get through this. The great residents of this county and the state of Florida, we're no stranger to these storms, but we ask that you work with us and help us make certain that you're safe. And thanks for being here today.
We'll take questions if you have them. Yes, ma'am?
How much space do we have at these shelters, and what should they not bring?
Sandra?
Yeah, we feel confident that we're able to adequately support the number of people in the evacuated areas that we feel will be seeking the shelters. And in people who are going to be coming to the shelters, we do ask that you bring any essential supplies, medications. If you're bringing pets, please bring food, a cage for your animals, leashes. We don't have cots at shelters, so please bring something to sleep on, a pillow, and some entertainment, books, because if you do, power goes out, then you can't charge your devices. So just bring anything that you feel that would make you comfortable. Keep in mind that there could be crowding at the shelters, so try not to bring too much stuff. When you enter, you'll get a small area in the shelter to reside in during that time.
Before Irma, I believe you issued an order 2 to 3 days before impact. We expect impact tomorrow. Did you kind of consider issuing this order before? What stopped you and what kind of changed overnight?
We did consider calling for evacuation yesterday, but given the uncertainty of the path, the timing just wasn't right. And so the current path with the anticipated impacts of the storm meets all the criteria that we use for calling for evacuation. And the areas being evacuated are small compared to the evacuations during Irma. You may recall that Irma covered the entire state with hurricane force winds. This storm was much smaller. We don't expect nearly the same kinds of wind velocities that we saw during Irma. So calling for evacuation today is a perfectly reasonable decision. Stacy?
Roger, a lot of new people to Lee County and to Florida. What message do you have for those folks that are new to our state and our county?
People who have moved to Lee County in the last several years after Hurricane Irma, which of course was the last storm, is they should stay tuned to the local television stations and news outlets for all of their information, and we will continue to provide storm information to the TV stations and others, so that people will then they'll know exactly how to react, whether it's evacuation or picking up all of the furniture in their yard and debris so that it doesn't blow and damage neighbors' homes. So it's a lot of common sense. But if you're in the evacuation zone, go ahead and leave. Take your time, but go ahead and leave now. But otherwise, pay attention to the TV stations. Yes, sir.
Kevin, what advice do you have for people at Fort Myers Beach or Sanibel that decide not to go?
Well, if people on the barrier islands who decide not to go, they do so at their own peril. The best thing they can do is leave. With the kind of tidal surge we're talking about, it would not be uncommon for both islands to be overwashed, and it's a dangerous place to be. We cannot, by law, force people off the islands, but we strongly recommend that they go. Yes, sir.
As far as trash in yard and waste goes, are you advising residents to still put that out today? Are we still picking those items up to make sure that they're not flying around in the case of strong winds?
If you're in the evacuation zone A and partial B zone, partial evacuation zone and B, that you not put your trash out. Everyone else, go ahead, put their trash out. We'll be picking up today based on the regular schedule, and then we'll see how the storm progresses, and we can announce later today or tomorrow about future trash pickup days. Yes, ma'am.
We still have residents asking about sandbags. Do you know the status of that? Will there be any available today?
Sandra.
We did have the sand locations out yesterday. Many of them were depleted, so there may still be some sand drops locations that are available. You can contact your fire districts if you're still looking for some sand.
How many people do you expect to leave, and how many people kind of live in these zones?
So there are about 250,000 people who live in the evacuation zones that we've outlined, and we would anticipate about 10%. Based on history, 10% to leave.
Is there a place you advise people to kind of go? A certain area that you think would be, a better place to evacuate?
simple enough to pay attention to the forecast track of the storm as it progresses. And first, if the people are going to leave, find a relative or friend outside the evacuation area, outside the effects of the storm as first choice. Second choice, go to one of the shelters, one of the 10 shelters, and as a last resort, stay at home. It's depending on where you live, sheltering at home is not a bad option, but people will have to make their own decision.
Lastly, can you just briefly go over Zone A and Zone B, which areas, name the locations?
Sandra.
Yeah, and we'll be posting a map. It'll be important to direct residents to the map because then they can see where they live pinpointed to that map. But essentially, Zone A is all the barrier islands and all the coastal areas and leading up to the borders next to the river, the Caloosahatchee River. And there'll be some areas down in the Bonita area closer to the Imperial River. So again, important for everyone to look at that map. And then, as was stated earlier, Zone B, the only Zone B that is called for is south of Veterans in Cape Coral.
You were hearing an update there from Lee County officials, and here's the map they were referring to out of Fort Myers. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. We're continuing to track Hurricane Ian as it barrels toward Florida. And obviously, officials are asking people to be prepared and also evacuate if they are in the proper locations. Earlier today, my colleague Christy Larson talked with a former FEMA official about what goes into these different protocols. Let's listen in here from earlier on Live Now from Fox.
Here to help do that with us is our former FEMA employee. We do have Mark Naveau joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Mark, we appreciate your time here today. I know you and I were speaking a little bit about just why this storm in particular is so dangerous. Florida not seeing a hurricane like this on the Gulf side in many, many years. And it's also what comes with that storm, more than just the winds that you say is concerning.
Yeah, no question. Hi, Christy. The challenge to this one is the speed in which it's moving. Of course, we haven't hit landfall yet. We're talking 24, 36 hours out. But what the track is anticipated to hit, as you said, on the west side that hasn't seen a hurricane in 100 years, but that this hurricane may stall, move slowly over land. And you couple the amount of rain that's predicted along with a 10-foot storm surge, which is really just a big wall of water coming from the Gulf of Mexico. Those two combining can make this a very deadly and dangerous hurricane.
Well, and you were speaking about that to me, that the storm surge is really where you can see, unfortunately, a lot of lives lost. So go into a bit more detail about what it does, especially when we know that this storm is moving pretty slowly over the area of Florida once it will make landfall.
Yeah, what we're really talking about, most people would perceive it to be almost like a tidal wave. And so depending upon the force that this hurricane comes in off of the Gulf, which they're anticipating on that west side, anywhere from 6 to 10 foot wave, just moving its way through an inland. And that can go up to a half a mile inland. So you may be on the coast thinking you're safe, but here comes this tremendous wave of water that's going to come, coupled with the rainfall. It overwhelms the ground supply, the storm drains. It can't drain. It's knocking down power lines. It's knocking power out. So it becomes a very big challenge for folks.
And as we think ahead to these next few hours and into these next few days, I know so many people have been listening to their county officials. How important is it that people are really taking the warnings seriously instead of thinking this is just something to dramatize what's going on?
Yeah, it is huge because you can't recover from some of this. You know, once that the water starts to come in from the Gulf of Mexico plus the rainfall, there's no egress, right? Because not only are we talking about water, we're talking about winds up to 110 miles an hour, which are going to knock down power lines. It's going to block egress for folks. It's not going to allow first responders to come in and get folks if they decide to stay. That's why they're trying to emphasize, if you're anywhere near, just leave. And you don't have to go too far is what they're saying. You don't necessarily have to go to another state, but you do have to go far enough away. And so they're encouraging people, don't wait. Just get out now, be safe. You can always come back if nothing happens. A little bit of inconvenience. On the other side, you could lose your life if you don't evacuate.
Yeah, I think that right there is the biggest emphasis that all of our officials we've been listening into have been saying, is that do you really want to risk your life to stay in your home during this event? And as you said, it's as easy as moving inland a little bit further for those who are right along that Gulf Coast.
Absolutely. And Florida, you know, they're no stranger to hurricanes. They're very good at responding to these. As a matter of fact, they have a contraflow system where they can change the direction of the freeways to egress. And it's one of the few states in the entire nation that requires gas stations to have emergency generators on those evacuation freeways so that people can get fuel if necessary. So they're really good about being able to move people, heed the advice, get out, board up. You can always come back. Be safe.
And Mark, thinking about then once people are returning and then they're going to have to assess the damage, that's why it's so important that they are doing all these preparations ahead of time, because then when they come back, they already had all their video evidence, their photos of their homes, so that they can see the difference that may have been left behind because of this hurricane. And then I know a lot of people too are going to have a long road to recovery depending on how much damage they may have seen.
Yeah, without question. And you know, with phones nowadays, you can quickly go through your house and just do a video, and you're in essence chronicled all your possessions and the status of those. That's very easy to do, very simple. Take it with you, and you've got a good chronological log of what's there in case you have to, you know, hopefully not many people do, but you have to recover from this. You have to remember too, it's not just people's homes, but it's the business, it's the infrastructure. And Tampa Bay, for example, half of the fuel, gasoline that's used each day comes in through the Tampa Bay port. So if that port, we know it's going to be shut down as a precaution, but if there's damage to that port, now we're talking about a shortage of gasoline, potentially. They've got reserves, but that just gives you an idea of not just the risk to people, but also to the business and the economy.
So what's the biggest difference then with what a hurricane we're seeing coming today versus other ones that they've been dealing with? Because as we've mentioned, of course, the Gulf side usually pretty protected when it comes to hurricane season. So what are you noticing here with this one?
Yeah, I think the alarm, you know, the National Hurricane Center does a wonderful job at being able to track these storms and come up with different paths and probabilities. But we also know it's Mother Nature, and we spend a lot of time chasing hurricanes around. So you put resources in different locations. They've got urban search and rescue swift water teams, you know, down in Miami, in Tennessee, and Georgia. They've got 13,000 additional electrical workers ready to respond in if necessary. They've got meals ready to eat. They've got bottled water and distribution sites. So they're doing everything necessary to prepare. But the concern with this one is it's high winds, heavy rainfall, coupled with this storm surge. Rarely do you have all three of those align with such magnitude that they're anticipating here, and that's where the alarm's coming from.
Yeah, and we know from those officials as they're trying to get all the residents prepared, they said, you know, we don't want to put ourselves in harm's way to have to go and rescue you, so please heed all the warnings. Any final thoughts, Mark, that you want to leave with our viewers as we continue to look ahead to Hurricane Ian making its approach to Florida?
Well, one of the challenges to this is if they lose power, right, it's the ability to continue to get information, which is important. So I try and encourage family and friends is to get a portable radio, have that secondary communication set up. You might not be able to use your cell phone because the towers may be down, the power's out, something like that. But if you do have a portable radio, at least you can hear what's going on and plan accordingly. Now, if you evacuate that area, that's the best thing to do because you don't have to worry about some of those. You can always come back. But the key thing, I think, is number one, evacuate and make sure you're able to gather information to make good decisions as we go through this.
Yes, and as we've been highlighting, Mark, you know, the most important thing is your life. So the rest of it, you can replace the items inside of your home. You can replace a cell phone if you happen to lose it or leave it behind, but you can't replace a life. So we do appreciate you going through all of these just important reminders for everyone. Again, Mark Naveau joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you so much for that update as we continue to watch Hurricane Ian, a Category 3 storm right now currently, and we're watching on our XRAD computer weather monitor as you can see the cone of uncertainty there, the path just south of Tampa. Yesterday it was directly over Tampa, so it shifted just a little bit to the east in the last 24 or so hours. We are going to get an update in the next couple hours, hopefully 2.5 hours, from Governor Ron DeSantis out of Florida, but he's also held several already today, and we want to take you back out there one more time to the latest update from the Florida governor here on Live Now from Fox.
Good evening. I'm joined here today with Kevin Guthrie, our DEM director, Major General Jim Eifert, head of the Florida National Guard, Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue. We're also, for the first time, joined by Rear Admiral Brendan McPherson, Commander, Coast Guard 7th District. We also have Colonel Gene Spalding with the Florida Highway Patrol, and then again, Gracia Check, FEMA for Region 4 Administrator for FEMA. As of 5 p.m., Hurricane Ian is located roughly 250 miles south of Sarasota. It's moving north at 10 miles per hour. It is a strong Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour. As many of you know, these tracks have migrated over the past 2 days, and more recently, starting this morning, the track has migrated south of Tampa. At the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center, had landfall somewhere in the Sarasota area. The 5 p.m. advisory has adjusted that track a little bit more south, and so again, this is an inexact science, of course, subject to change, but they're now forecasting it to strike land basically at the Charlotte-Sarasota County border. And if you look at that area and you're familiar with that area, you know there's a lot of potential for flooding and storm surge in that part of the state. You also, because of the track it's taking, expect a major impact somewhere in that area, but it's also going to continue moving throughout the state, and it's actually going to exit probably somewhere Volusia, Flagler, St. Johns counties. So that's going to take tropical storm force winds at a minimum up through almost like it's riding I-4. So you're going to have impacts in places like Polk County, Orange County, Volusia County. That's going to be significant winds. It's also going to be a lot of rainfall. And so those areas are already saturated. You're going to end up with more. That is going to cause hazards for trees falling down. It will likely interrupt power for many communities in that part of the state, and this is going to be working its way. You'll have the first landfall will be tomorrow night, Wednesday night, but it's going to meander through the state all the rest of Wednesday night, all of Thursday, and it's going to exit most likely sometime on Friday morning. So this is going to be a lot of impacts, and they will be felt far and wide throughout the state of Florida. I want to commend our counties on Florida's Gulf Coast for all their hard work in doing preparations, particularly over the last week. We also have a lot of residents in those counties. Many of them know the drill, but many of them are also new to Florida. And you've seen all reports that we've received from Lee and Charlotte and Sarasota all the way into Tampa Bay area is by and large people are taking appropriate precautions. When you look at storm surge of this nature, that is a very life-threatening hazard when you're talking about 10 feet, 12 feet of storm surge, which you could see in certain parts of this when it makes landfall. It's also going to produce a massive amount of rain. It is going to produce major flooding. The storm, when it impacts land, it's expected, yes, it will weaken, but it will also slow, which means it's just going to be churning out rain, moving at a snail's pace. That rain is going to pile up very quickly in different parts of Southwest Florida. So these hazards are real. We want people to be able to take the appropriate precautions. Listen to your local emergency management officials. There have been evacuations now in place for some time up and down the Gulf Coast of Florida. As the storm moves in, you're going to potentially have directives issued from folks in the interior of our state or even on the east coast of the state for low-lying areas that absolutely could end up flooding due to this storm. So listen to that and heed those instructions and make sure you're doing what you need to do to be able to protect yourself. So we now have over 2.5 million people that are under some type of evacuation order, and that includes people in counties such as Charlotte, Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Lee, Levy, Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, Sarasota counties, Collier, Gilchrist, Glades, Highland, and Taylor counties. Make sure you know your evacuation zone. You go to floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare, floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare. We can rebuild property, we can fix infrastructure, you can fix your home. You don't get a mulligan when your personal safety is at risk. And so we know this thing is going to be hitting the state directly sometime tomorrow evening. You still have some time, but that time is rapidly running out. Florida Department of Transportation and Florida Highway Patrol have been in coordination. Once the traffic on I-4 reduced to under 40 miles an hour and you started to see the buildup, they have activated the emergency shoulder use on I-4 eastbound from Tampa to Orlando. This will add capacity and will allow the evacuations to move more quickly. In this area, motorists can use the left shoulder. And then in Orlando, where the shoulder use ends, there are several roads where motorists can move north or south, or they can continue on I-4 in the normal traffic lanes. And we do emergency shoulder use rather than the one-way traffic because you still need to be able to get people into where the storm is coming with supplies and all sorts of other things. And so this has been studied by this department for a decade, and this has proven to be the superior way to do it. There is not yet emergency shoulder use on I-75 because the traffic is flowing. If that traffic does go to the point where it's under 40 miles an hour sustained, then they will execute that. Why wouldn't you just execute it regardless? Well, because it's hazardous to have people going 75 miles an hour on a shoulder, and that's where the traffic has been by and large. But we understand that can change, and the FDOT has been instructed by me and Kevin to make sure that they make those appropriate adjustments. We've also suspended tolls on additional roads. We had all the tolls in the Tampa Bay area, of course, as well as I-75 going into Alligator Alley. We now have State Road 91, the Turnpike Mainland from Osceola Parkway north to I-75, State Road 417, Southern Connector Extension, Central Florida Greenway and Seminole Expressway, State Road 429, the Western Beltway, State Road 408, State Road 429, State Road 528, the Beach Line, State Road 414, State Road 538, State Road 453, State Road 551, I-4 Express, and State Road 552. So those are all the main toll roads in Central Florida. We have the Tampa Bay area, you have it going into Alligator Alley, and now you have that. A list of all the facilities can be found at fdot.gov/Ian toll suspension, fdot.gov/Ian toll suspension. And as we continue to monitor the path, if there are more tolls that need to be suspended, of course we will do it. We announced earlier today, but want to make sure everyone knows that if you are seeking shelter in a hotel, that Expedia has partnered with Visit Florida to provide access to hotel rooms in our state. If you go to expedia.com/Florida, expedia.com/Florida, you can see what is available. And again, if you're called upon to evacuate, you don't need to necessarily evacuate hundreds of miles away. You're being called to evacuate because of the threat of storm surge and flood risk. If you get to higher ground, most of the places in the state of Florida are going to be able to handle hurricane force winds, and so you'll be able to be there for the storm, then hopefully return as soon as possible. Don't leave your pets behind. Helpful information about planning for your pet is also available at floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare, floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare. Almost every pet shelter is going to be pet friendly. People understand that that's important, and it is important that we're taking care of our pets. So as of 3 p.m., almost 100 shelters, including more than 50 special needs shelters, have been opened, mostly along the Gulf Coast region of the state of Florida. There's more shelters that are constantly being added, and particularly as the track of the storm changes, you're going to see more counties shift into that mode in different parts of Florida. Go to floridadisaster.org/shelters if you want to see the shelter availability, floridadisaster.org/shelters. We now have 56 school districts that have announced school closures. If you want the most up-to-date information on that, go to floridadoe.org/storminfo. We are at over 5,000 with the Florida National Guard. We have 2,000 guardsmen from neighboring states. National Guard has 3 Chinook helicopters staged and ready to respond, and they actually have 6 more en route. We have 5 urban search and rescue teams activated. We have 3 additional teams on standby as needed. And we have FWC, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, has officers placed all around the state in anticipation of heavy rains and flooding. They have high water vehicles as well as shallow draft boats that are available for immediate deployment in a search and rescue situation. We also have aviation assets for FWC that are on standby. Of course, Highway Patrol is surge personnel, and they will continue to do that as needed. And we'll hear from the Admiral, but U.S. Coast Guard has staged 21 rotary wing aircraft, 9 fixed wing aircraft, 4 cutters. They also have shallow draft vessels ready to provide search and rescue assistance in flooded areas should that be necessary. As of today, 100% of operating long-term care facilities do have a generator on site, and we're happy about that. We now have over 30,000 linemen across the various utility companies, both investor-owned and municipal, as well as electrical co-ops, that are staged for power restoration across the state. And so we anticipate that that will grow, and we also anticipate that the needs for power restoration have grown as the track of the storm has changed. I mean, we were here a couple days ago. They were looking at maybe it skirting the Gulf Coast and ended up impacting someplace in northern Florida. That obviously would be less power impact than having a direct entry into southwest Florida and then cutting across the state where it's going to impact millions and millions of people. So they all understand that, and the impact area really spans all of their different customer service areas. I mean, you're going to have FPL, Duke, TECO, all of them are going to be impacted by this, and all of them have people that are ready to go. We've gotten at Florida DEM about 730 requests for assistance. Over 600 have been fulfilled. Others are on the way. Some can only be fulfilled once the storm hits, and they will be. As the track of the storm has shifted more south, Kevin Guthrie has shifted more resources to the southwest portion of the state, and so you have folks that are there, medical, shelter, a whole host of different ways to be able to help the folks there. We are bringing in more than 1 million gallons of fuel to support response efforts. We have 10 feeding kitchens staged in the area through our nonprofit partners, and then 15 hospitals and over 100 healthcare facilities have been evacuated across the Gulf Coast. For facilities that are not evacuating, it is our expectation that visitation is not restricted and patients are still able to see their families, but we do appreciate being able to speak with a number of folks with major hospital systems. If you have hospitals in low-lying area, they have a plan. They know this, they could be called upon to do it, and they've executed those plans, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate them working hard to keep these patients safe. Again, if you have any questions about what to do over the next, obviously, if you're on the west coast of Florida, this is something that is much more imminent. You are going to get, as we get into Thursday and Friday, you're going to see impacts all the way to the east coast of Florida. This thing's going to exit the state of Florida and most likely end up getting stronger, riding into the Atlantic, and then probably hitting Georgia, South Carolina, someplace like that. So this thing's the real deal. It is a major, major storm. I want the Admiral to come up and talk about some of the things that they're doing, and also just for me to be able to say we appreciate all the folks in the Coast Guard. Many are Florida residents, many are stationed here, and we appreciate the great job that you guys do.
Thank you, Governor. So as the Governor said, I'm Rear Admiral Brendan McPherson. I'm the Senior Operational Commander for the Coast Guard in the Southeast, including the state of Florida. And we are working very closely with our local, state, and federal partners to prepare for this very dangerous, life-threatening storm. Our first #1 priority is search and rescue and saving lives. So in order to do that, we've already dispatched 30 aircraft to the region. One of our largest air stations is right here in Clearwater. And so we've evacuated those aircraft. We've moved them to West Palm Beach. We have aircraft pre-positioned there, Miami, as well as Mobile, Alabama. Those aircraft will be ready to move into the area as soon as the conditions allow them to fly in there safely. I'd like to take this opportunity for anybody that is second guessing. There's still time to evacuate. I would encourage you to do so if you are in one of those evacuation zones. While it sounds like we have a lot of resources, and we do, we really think it's more important that people evacuate, follow the local officials' guidance on that because of the strain it can put on it and the dangers to them and our air crews. In addition to saving lives, the other thing we're really focused on is being ready to reopen the ports as soon as the conditions allow. We have Coast Guard cutters and teams specially trained to be able to do that. Standing by as soon as conditions allow, we'll be working with our partners from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, along with NOAA, to conduct surveys, identify any hazards, and then open those waterways so that we can move commodities into the port of Tampa Bay as soon as possible. We recognize that those ports are critical to the safety, security, and the prosperity of the region. In addition to that, we'll also be prepared to respond to any spills or hazardous spills in or along the waterways, and we'll continue to work with our local partners along with EPA to do that. And finally, we will be ready to receive any mission assignments we may receive from the state of Florida through Federal Emergency Management Agency. And lastly, as the Governor indicated, the Coast Guard is not only responding to a hurricane, we are impacted by this as well. Nearly 5,000 Coast Guard men and women and families call this area home, and so we're doing everything we can to support them to provide the assistance they need as they evacuate and their loved ones stay on the watch. Thank you, Governor.
Okay, Kevin Guthrie.
Good evening. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership. You've been right here with us the entire time, so I certainly appreciate that, and I know the men and women of the Florida Division of Emergency Management do as well. Florida Division of Emergency Management remains in constant contact with all 67 counties. I have called about a dozen of those individuals in the highest impact area today. We currently have more than 700 active missions, as the Governor has already mentioned. This includes coordination of resources such as trucks of food, water, generators, pumps, and most importantly, staff to staff shelters. We're mobilizing and deploying over 100,000 tarps to protect homes from storm impacts after the disaster. 5 Florida urban search and rescue teams are activated and will be prepared to deploy to impacted areas around the state as response and recovery efforts begin. We have federal USAR teams from Texas, Virginia, Indiana here to help us as well. We also have another team from Ohio that is currently mobilizing. We have state agencies, state emergency management agencies from around the country that have mobilized. We have about a dozen stretching all the way from Montana and Colorado all the way to the East Coast that have come in to assist us. We're currently coordinating the provision of meals for first responders staged in Orange County. If residents have any questions about resources for Hurricane Ian, I urge them to reach out to their local emergency management agency or public safety office. If they cannot find the information there, they can go to our website at floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare. At this point in time, I urge everyone that is in an evacuation zone that has been asked to evacuate, the time is now. You must evacuate now. There will be a point in time where you will not be safe to travel the roads. The time to evacuate is now. Get on the road. I want to further emphasize this, and many of you know that I was a local emergency manager before I came here. There will come a point in time when local public safety officials will not be able to respond to your help, your cry for help. They will not be able to do it. And you may be left to fend for yourself. Again, the time to evacuate is now. Governor, I want to thank you for your continued leadership and your partnership. Again, you've been steadfast and right here with us the entire time. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things I think in terms of the evacuations, of course, you have some areas that are barrier islands, of course, would be very prone to storm surge. You also have in Southwest Florida, really throughout the state, but certainly in the communities that may get hit with the initial impact of the eye of the storm, you've got a lot of mobile homes, and you have folks, and actually the way those are done, they actually can withstand 100-mile-an-hour winds. In South Florida, I think they have to do up to 110 to be certified, but you're looking at a Category 3 storm that is strengthening. It will become a Category 4 storm, and it may even be a Category 4 storm when it makes impact in what looks to be Southwest Florida. So that is not a risk that you want to take if you are living in some type of mobile home or manufactured housing. And I know a lot of people have left and have sought shelters, but it's my understanding that not everybody has. You still have time to do it. You do not have to evacuate hundreds of miles. Obviously, if you have friends, family, some of that, hotels, that's preferable. But as a last resort, these shelters are open. And I would just urge people to take advantage of that. I know it's not easy sometimes to leave your home, and I know people don't want to see anything bad happen when they get back, but the stakes are high. This is a very powerful storm. It will weaken once it gets on shore, and by the time it moves through the state, it's not going to cut through the whole state as a Cat 4, but it very well may make impact as a Cat 4, and that's really, really serious business. Okay, any questions? Yes, sir.
Governor, how would you characterize your conversations with President Biden as Ian approaches?
So I have not personally spoken with the president, but the FEMA has approved our pre-landfall request. We've had Gracia here really since the weekend. Gracia's been here. She's always around here. And so we feel like we have a good relationship with FEMA. I'm happy to brief the president.
Okay, this is Andrew Kraft here. We've been listening in to the latest update from about a couple of hours ago now with Florida Governor DeSantis and other emergency management officials in the state of Florida. Right now, we're going to take just a quick commercial break. I want to thank you for being with us. We're coming up on the 6 o'clock hour here on the West Coast, almost 9 o'clock there in Florida as we continue to track all the movements of now Category 3 Hurricane Ian. Of course, in the next hour, starting at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, you can join me as we talk about the road to the election every Tuesday night until November the 8th there, as we continue to track all of these races. And of course, Hurricane Ian is having us to modify some of that. So we're going to break down a lot of these Florida headlines when we return, as the road to November is now 41 days away. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We want to thank you for being with us here as we continue to monitor really the biggest story of the week, and that is Hurricane Ian. But what we're going to do throughout the course of the next half hour is talk about the road to the election, the road to November, and that's what we're going to do each and every Tuesday until November the 8th, breaking down these key races in so many states around the country, where we'll be also talking to our reporters who are covering the midterm elections. We'll be talking to political experts and issue and policy-based experts on what voters care about the most. And then, of course, we'll be bringing on candidates themselves. We have put out requests to a number of these candidates, both at the Senate level, at the governor's level, at the level of Congress as well, to hear from them so you can make your decisions. Of course, this show is for two types of people. It's for the political junkies who can't get enough of politics, and we have you covered there. But it's also for the political novices as well, who might not be paying attention just yet, but who want to be informed when they go to the ballot box, when they go to the voting booth on November the 8th. Of course, we had a plan today, but of course, breaking news changes everything, and that's what we're going to roll with right now. As tonight, we're going to focus on some of these key races in the state of Florida as we continue to track Hurricane Ian. It's now at a Category 3 level strength. It's going to make landfall sometime tomorrow at this same time of day there, about 8 p.m. Eastern. And so before we get into some of the politics tonight, let's talk about where the storm is right now, what the preparations are looking like for so many who are under these mandatory and voluntary evacuation orders. And as the Sunshine State really is girding for this. Here's Fox News correspondent Phil Keating from Florida.
Exactly what state of Florida and local leaders want to see. A beach town, practically a ghost town, nearly empty, as most residents are heeding the warnings and following the mandatory evacuation orders, heading inland, uphill, potentially for their own lives. Hurricane Ian made landfall early this morning in western Cuba as a Category 3. pummeling the island with heavy rains and wind causing damage. In Paso Grill, a tiny beach town southwest of Tampa, the last day for hanging protective shutters and plywood is today.
We're just trying to do what we can do, you know what I'm saying? All we can do is just get stuff in here, protect our building, and then go from there. Only God's in control of what happens with the storm.
Last-minute grocery store runs for food and water? Good luck. Shelves have been depleted in many cases as hurricane-hardened Floridians fully expect to lose power for days. Governor Ron DeSantis has activated 5,000 National Guard troops, some on loan from out of state, and is pre-deploying search and rescue teams as a 10 to 15-foot storm surge and flooding is forecast. He's dedicating special attention to the state's significant elderly population.
We do have emergency refills of maintenance prescriptions. Those are authorized for another 30 days. We do report today 100% of operating long-term care facilities do have a generator on site.
This could be the worst storm to slam Tampa Bay in 100 years. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell magnified the seriousness of the threat today from the White House.
By the time it reaches the shores of Florida, the storm is going to slow down to approximately 5 miles per hour. And this is significant because what this means is that Floridians are going to experience the impacts from this storm for a very long time.
And as of 5 o'clock Tuesday night, Tampa International Airport closed for the duration, and over in Orlando, its airport will be doing the same in the morning. In Paso Grill, Florida, Phil Keating, Fox News.
All right, Phil, thanks so much. We want to hear now from Fox 13 in Tampa, especially their own Craig Patrick, as he spoke today to Florida Senator Marco Rubio about the preparations the Sunshine State has in store throughout the next couple of days. Let's listen in.
Craig Patrick is here with a closer look at that threat and how to stay safe and really save lives, Craig.
And there's certainly a science to the evacuation orders. That's why it's so critical to follow them. We'll start with storm surge, specifically how it looks and what it does. This is Mexico Beach in North Florida before Hurricane Michael. And there's after the hurricane plowed through it in 2018. This is what a 17.5-foot storm surge can do. And this is what happened in South Florida after Hurricane Andrew struck 30 years ago with a storm surge of around 17 feet above sea level. And here's what happened to the coast of Mississippi in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina's surge of water washed through homes.
Brick homes completely washed away from the foundation into the home behind it. The home behind it for several blocks then crushed. Multi-story windjammer condominiums, all fine from the 4th floors up. But look what happened to the first couple of floors.
Katrina had a storm surge in the 20-foot range. Those are all examples of storm surge 17 feet and up. But a storm surge of 5 to 10 feet can and does still cause catastrophic damage and fatalities.
You know, what you're seeing now in some of these storm surge projections of upwards of 10 to 12, feet, 14 feet above ground level. And so that's just not a survivable event if you're there when that happens. And that's why these evacuation orders are so critical.
For context, with surge, just 6 inches of rushing water is enough to knock over a typical adult, and 2 feet will carry away most cars and pickup trucks. That's perspective on storm surge. Meanwhile, there also is a severe risk of down power lines, not just knocking out power, but avoid those down power lines at all costs. Also avoid floodwaters, freshwater flooding at all costs, because there may be down power lines in them, which can be deadly. 1, 2, those floodwaters may be much deeper than you think. 3, there are snakes and other wildlife within those waters in all probability. Those are just some of the reasons, but also the water's highly contaminated in most cases with a combination of chemicals and waste that can make you very, very sick.
Yeah, looking back at some of those past hurricanes really puts it in perspective there, Craig. So we're talking about the aftermath here. What does the government suggest you do if you return home and you find damage? Is it safe to enter your home?
Officially, the answer is no. If you see damage in your home, you should not enter. Now, they don't mean something like a broken window. They're referring to flooding, of course, or structural damage. And in that case, you should not enter until local authorities have deemed that particular property safe. And also, if you hear any shifting sounds within the home, that is another red flag after damage that you need to get out.
Okay, we thank Fox 13 in Tampa there, especially Craig Patrick. Live now look, though, at the White House. So many are talking about what the federal response is going to be to the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. Right now, let's hear from Fox News White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich on what President Biden is saying today.
Told each one of them my conversation separately. Whatever they need, I mean this sincerely, whatever they need, contact me directly. And they know how to do that.
President Biden called 2 Democrat mayors and a moderate Republican mayor who were in Hurricane Ian's path, but not Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's openly feuded with the administration on issues from COVID to immigration. Instead, Biden had his FEMA administrator pick up the phone.
We do not bring politics into our ability to respond to these disasters. We are going to support whatever Governor DeSantis asks of us. My regional administrator is with the governor right now, making sure that we're understanding what the needs are.
The storm's impact may spread well beyond the Florida coast. The nation's strategic oil reserves, intended for use in emergencies like hurricanes, are already at their lowest levels since 1984, since Biden began selling them to bring down the cost of gas. Officials now don't know if there's enough supply to cover the rest of hurricane season.
It all depends on what the impacts from this storm might bring, and so we need to do those assessments after the storm passes.
Okay, back out live to the White House. We are getting more and more updates as well. In about the last 30 minutes or so, we did hear from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. I want to put up this tweet because a call between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and President Biden has, in fact, occurred. She said and tweeted this: President Biden spoke this evening with Governor DeSantis of Florida to discuss the steps the federal government is taking to help Florida prepare for Hurricane Ian. The president and the governor committed to continued close coordination. Now, this has unfortunately been a theme, though, all day, with so many reporters asking White House officials, FEMA officials, and Florida officials why a call had not occurred just yet. Listen in to what the FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, said at the White House briefing earlier today.
In the past, President Biden, has made calls to governors in situations of natural disasters. Kay Ivey in Alabama, Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas, or the governor in Texas. Is there any? Can you articulate, I guess, how those determinations are made and why it hasn't been made in this case to have the president call the governor?
Yeah, the president is very focused on making sure that the federal family has the right resources available to support this. That is why I contacted the governor right away, and we have a team of my senior leadership that are embedded with the governor to make sure that we're supporting that. Our focus today is making sure that we have the right measures in place to support the life-saving activities that need to happen. Any conversations afterwards will need to be, we need to see what the damages are.
But he's made conversations with the mayors, so is there any reason why not the governor?
Again, we have a strong team that's in place supporting the governor right now, working side by side with him and his staff. We'll continue to stay engaged with him.
Yeah, go ahead. Just a follow-up to that. Normally, presidents call governors or the governors call presidents, but the only thing that really, during hurricanes, the only real question I really want answered is it in any way the fact that they haven't talked? Is there any way that it's impeded efforts for the federal government or FEMA to implement plans in Florida? And if so, what would they be?
No, we are very focused on what the needs of Florida is right now. We do not bring politics into our ability to respond to these disasters. We are going to support whatever Governor DeSantis asks of us. We signed his emergency declaration within hours of him sending it in. We'll continue to do that as we see what the impacts of the storm are.
So the communication between the president and the governor has no impact on how you all operate?
Zero.
Okay, there you heard from the FEMA administrator that the absence or presence of any communications between the governor and the president would have zero impact on the response itself. But we just want to reiterate the fact that a call has, in fact, happened between President Biden and Governor DeSantis, according to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. But Florida Governor DeSantis was asked about this at his latest briefing. Let's listen to what he had to say. He had some fiery responses to some of these journalists in the room there. Let's listen.
Governor, how would you characterize your conversations with President Biden as Ian approaches?
So I have not personally spoken with the president, but FEMA has approved our pre-landfall request. We've had Gracia here really since the weekend. Gracia's been here. She's always around here. And so we feel like we have a good relationship with FEMA. I'm happy to brief the president if he's interested in hearing what we're doing in Florida. My view on all this is you got people's lives at stake, you got their property at stake, and we don't have time for pettiness. We got to work together to make sure we're doing the best job for them. So my phone line is open, and we're happy. But we do appreciate the quick approval of the pre-landfall declaration.
Okay, we also have one more snippet there from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who really went after a reporter today in the briefing, talking about whether or not this is going to get political. Ron DeSantis really shot that down. Let's listen.
She acknowledged concerns that Florida, as was said, lacks response to the storm so far, and that
Whoa. Give me a break. That is nonsense. Stop politicizing, okay? Stop it. We declared a state of emergency when this thing wasn't even formed. We've had people in here, you've had counties doing, they've done a lot of hard work, and honestly, you're trying to attack me, I get, but you're attacking these other people who've worked very hard, and so that's just totally false. I don't think we've ever, certainly since I've been governor, declared a state of emergency this early. We made sure that we were very inclusive with it. We said that there was a lot of uncertainty, and we've worked to make sure the preparations that have been done and all the stuff, you talk to the people at the counties when they've needed something, stuff gets there very quickly because of what Kevin and his team have done.
Okay, so you heard there from a pretty testy, fiery Ron DeSantis saying this response is efficient, quick, above board, and the like, responding to some of the criticism there that it was not. In the meantime, though, we want to hear from Ron DeSantis' main opponent in the gubernatorial election. That, of course, is Democratic Congressman Charlie Crist. First, before we do that, we want to put up this graphic that we had made here. And this is the Real Clear Politics average polling matchup between DeSantis and Charlie Crist, of which DeSantis is up 48.8% to Crist's 44%. You can see there the time frame of the average of these polls from August the 24th to September the 18th there. But Charlie Crist had his own press conference today via Zoom, taking questions from reporters, and he was asked about how he thought and thinks Governor DeSantis is doing when it comes to the response with Hurricane Ian. Have a listen.
From what I understand, there wasn't a major hurricane when you were governor last time. How do you think that the current governor has handled the situation at hand currently?
I don't want to get into Monday morning quarterbacking before Monday. I don't think it's appropriate. I think that, and I understand the question, don't misunderstand me, but I think that what we all need to do is be focused on protecting our fellow Floridians, doing whatever we can to maintain that safety, watch out for the flooding, listen to local officials, as I said earlier. I think that's the appropriate posture for right now.
Okay, there, Charlie Crist not taking the bait from that reporter's question about what he thought so far of Governor DeSantis' response in the run-up to Hurricane Ian making landfall, which we've been reporting throughout the last 48 hours, is going to be tomorrow night around 8 p.m. Eastern, somewhere near Sarasota, Florida. In the meantime, we want to take just a quick commercial break. We want to thank you for watching the road to the election, as we are 41 days out from November the 8th. But after the break, we are going to be speaking with a Florida politics expert and reporter, one A.G. Gankarski, about how hurricanes have political implications, as sometimes they come in the middle of a campaigning season. We'll have that conversation in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox and the road to the election with yours truly, Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us. We do, before we get into some more of our politics coverage, have some updates about Hurricane Ian, the hurricane itself. Let's go out to this tweet from the National Hurricane Center. This is a 9 p.m. Eastern update, so about 20 minutes ago. They say, position update for Hurricane Ian, that the Key West International Airport recently reported a sustained wind of 50 miles per hour with a gust to 63 miles per hour. We have a live look at a very famous spot in Key West, Florida, the southernmost point of the contiguous United States there. And you can see, I believe it might be frozen, but this is a live look here as the waves roll in there over the pier. Take a look at that. You can see the wind, you can see the water coming up. So we'll keep on top of this. Let's get back, though, to some more of our political headlines. I want to now play a conversation I had with Florida politics reporter and editor A.G. Gankarski about so much of the conversation that we were talking about in the last 15 minutes about these races between Charlie Crist and Ron DeSantis, the Senate race between Marco Rubio and Val Demings, and how Hurricane Ian might impact all of that. Have a listen. Okay, and joining us here on Live Now from Fox is A.G. Gankarski with Florida Politics. And A.G. has joined us so many times before to talk about politics in the Sunshine State. But we're going to talk to you now, A.G., about how Hurricane Ian is factoring into some of these key races in Florida, especially the governor's race between Governor Ron DeSantis and Democrat Charlie Crist. What are their campaigns saying in the run-up to landfall tomorrow?
Well, DeSantis' campaign is still running ads, but they have taken the response to the storm posture. So there's none of the snark that you've usually seen from his campaign side. What you're seeing is more a focus on the leadership, a focus on evacuations and things like that, and the storm information. So you've really seen this shift in the last few days from DeSantis, from the culture warrior that we've seen on the campaign trail and so on, to a more standard crisis response governor. And if you've been in Florida, every governor gets tested this way. There's always a storm. They're often during hurricane season. So this is Ron DeSantis' time. So far, he's rising to the challenge. It's still early. The storm is still offshore. But he's going back and forth around the state. He's doing straight ahead interviews with national outlets, which he didn't usually do before. So that's interesting to watch. Charlie Crist, meanwhile, is playing defense. His ads are off of TV at the moment. He's ceased his ad buys. And he did a press conference today where he wouldn't say anything really confrontational about DeSantis. He said, this isn't the time for that kind of thing. This is a time for Floridians to come together. So we're seeing kind of a pause in the campaign. I don't think that's going to last much past the time that the storm lands. We have some real issues in the state property insurance market that Chris has denoted during the campaign already. So I think we're seeing the calm before the storm, both politically and in terms of meteorology of this.
No, that's such a good point. But, I think this is an interesting point, too, is that obviously DeSantis is governor right now. He's been through major hurricanes, but Charlie Crist was governor some time ago, and he's been through this as well. So they know this playbook. They know what the response needs to be, correct? And Florida is so prepared and equipped for this.
Right. I mean, administrations change, but the professionals who run the Division of Emergency Management and associated organizations, they don't change. This is career leadership. And that's the kind of thing that stabilizes when you're dealing with these storms. Much like in 2018, we had Hurricane Michael hit the Panhandle during the stretch run of that campaign. Rick Scott spent a lot of that campaign crisis managing and responding to what had happened there. And I think you're going to see something like that here. But a lot of this is being done by professionals who are not political appointees.
Yeah, I want to talk about the federal level and what that response is going to be. So President Biden was supposed to be in the state today for an event. Obviously, he had to postpone. There was also some reports out there that he has not made a call yet to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, kind of in the run-up to Hurricane Ian. What do you think the federal response might be if it necessitates a visit by President Biden, depending on how bad the flooding is, how bad the damage is? Could we see kind of a photo moment between Biden and DeSantis in the next couple of days?
It's possible. We saw one after the Surfside collapse a while back. We could see that again with this. We are seeing actual cooperation. The request for emergency was granted by the Biden administration. FEMA has been in contact, is in contact with the governor's office. So it doesn't have to be Biden talking to DeSantis. This is stuff that happens at a level below the presidency. The photo op where the president shows up, that's not really the thing that people are looking for. What people are looking for is, FEMA to come through. And that's something that, will take time to tell. I mean, reimbursements and all these things, they're not instantaneous. So you're seeing more cooperation than you might think. And for both Biden and DeSantis, who spent a lot of time throwing volleys at each other, they both have to recognize that this is time to govern. This is time to bury the campaign rhetoric a little bit and actually work toward conciliation. How long does it last? Who knows? But we're going to see that in the near term in Florida.
Yeah, and offline, you were saying that it always seems like a hurricane comes in the middle of campaigning during these election years. But then again, hurricanes also have the tendency to become political footballs, depending on how well the response goes to them in the aftermath of the storm. Do you foresee that happening here, depending on how the response is? Because a lot of the issues that are really pervasive throughout the state of Florida, they come to the fore when a hurricane comes by.
The most severe issue that's going to be in play here is the property insurance market. We've got 6 firms that have already gone under, left the state, what have you, this year. The 6th one was just this week. What that tells me is that if you see more of this failure, that's going to be laid at Ron DeSantis' feet, because as Charlie Crist said throughout the last couple of months, rates have gone up under DeSantis' watch, but these insurers are still not staying in the state. The problem that Florida has is that it's increasingly uninsurable. It's a high-risk state. These storms are getting bigger. There's been a lot of permitting in places where should have happened over decades, and Florida's not the only place where insurers are starting to take a second and third look about being active in this market. But there's just not appetite for this kind of risk. And Ron DeSantis is going to have to manage that crisis going into November, and if he has a second term, he's going to have to do more about it than has been done already.
Yeah, AG, we're some 40 plus days out from November 8th from the midterm election, but Will, do you think voters will think about Hurricane Ian, depending on how strong and how disastrous it is, going into the ballot box in the next couple of weeks? Will that be on the minds if there are kind of some of these lingering effects of Ian? Also, possibly another hurricane could come by in the meantime as well. Is this going to matter to voters?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the response. And like I've been saying, DeSantis is following a tried and tested playbook in terms of the response, in terms of getting the people who have issues. He'll be able to be in that situation of actually governing the state. I think that's a really big deal for him. I think overall, hurricanes tend to benefit incumbents. That is, of course, with the caveat that the property insurance market doesn't further deteriorate, in which case all bets are off. But what we have seen with past hurricanes, you've seen the depression and turnout in areas that are storm affected. In 2018, that was the Panhandle. It remains to be seen what happens with this storm.
Okay. Let's talk about election administration in Florida as well. Do you see that at all being impacted by Hurricane Ian as far as, early voting goes, some of these voting precinct centers that are getting ready for November? Have you gotten any reporting on that? Are they kind of ceasing operations until the storm goes by?
Well, we're still in the vote by mail period, so it's ballots being sent out and tabulated and received. I mean, this would be a much worse event if we're an October storm instead of a September storm in terms of election administration. So my guess, not knowing what the storm is going to do, is that the timing works out to where it won't disrupt Florida elections.
Okay. I want to talk about the Florida Senate race just briefly. Of course, Republican Senator Marco Rubio is facing the Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings. Have they come out? Have they spoken about Hurricane Ian? What have they said?
They both have said what you'd expect. Rubio said to take the storm seriously, so has Demings, but they're both still campaigning. Rubio was on Hannity last night campaigning against Demings, giving the usual speech. Val Demings has sent out multiple fundraising emails in recent hours. And this is a high dollar, high stakes Senate race, as you know. Neither of these candidates is taking their eye off the ball for 1 minute, regardless of what the storm does. And that's a measure of how close this race is. And to an extent, you know, the lesser effect that a federal official has than a state official in storm response.
Yeah. AG, last question for you. We know a lot of Floridians are going to be impacted by this storm. They've had to uproot their lives this week and evacuate, especially in the Tampa Bay area. Do you think this will have an impact on voting turnout overall in November, or is it just too hard to tell?
I don't think it's going to have a real impact on turnout at this point. You know, there are a lot of caveats that, you know, we don't know where the storm will make landfall. Tracks keep taking it south of the Tampa Bay and Sarasota area, which could make it affect less population in terms of the landfall part of it. So there are a lot of variables there, but there is time for the state to adjust, and there's precedent for adjusting. So right now, people should have confidence that things will proceed as normal in terms of the election itself.
And AG, in the next 36, 48 hours, what are you going to be looking for politically and at a climate weather level as well?
I'm looking at the tracks right now, because the eventual track of this thing makes all the difference in terms of, you know, the political ramifications of the storm. A direct impact where it comes into Tampa Bay or St. Petersburg is a much more severe thing in terms of property damage, in terms of humans being affected, as if it's, you know, down south toward the Everglades. Depending on where the storm comes in, depending on how long it stays on the peninsula, these issues, it's going to determine the political ramifications going forward.
AG Gankarski, thank you so much for your time. We'll talk again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.